Welcome, everybody. We are just getting ready for the Prime Revelry panel. We have some pretty exciting topics this evening. We are going to be discussing Trump's lies, the big lie. That should be fun. Then we're going to be discussing the end of the eviction moratorium. So strap in, folks. It's going to be a fun one. I'm about to go live. I think we're still waiting on a few people, but this is kind of a little bit behind the scenes take. Hope you guys all enjoy, and hopefully it'll be a fun, engaging panel tonight. I know a couple of these people. I know Shadows, and I know Kyo-san a little bit. Amanda Smash, I know her from some other panels we had, and then Prime, obviously. But Kevin and Malcolm are a little bit new to me, so we'll see. I'm guessing they're lefties, but who knows? So let's get in and hop in the see what they're talking about.
Yeah, that is really interesting.
Well, I mean, because I'm more in like the attorney side of things, so it's just interesting to get into just get into the mindset, I guess, of just somebody who is so close to a federal judge. Those guys are scary. Well, they're scary to us mere attorney mortals, but
Well,
we got a Bernie attorney.
The scariest thing, I don't know, but I feel like if I were in my dad's courtroom, the scariest thing would be like having to laugh at all his jokes because of how boring and dry his sense of humor is. It was pretty bad before he got sworn in, but in the past 4 or 5 years since he's been a judge, it's just he's gotten away with it going way downhill. Because when everyone has to laugh at your jokes, like it just doesn't. That's not good for your sense of humor. It becomes more dull.
Oh no. That's awesome. That's so funny though.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's why robots could never be lawyers, because they would never know when to laugh at the judge's jokes.
Well, exactly. That's why my job is secure.
Hope my volume
sorry
is
for
good.
The delay. Just had to handle something. I apologize.
It's all good.
Yeah. Thank you all for continuing to talk. At least it's actually quite helpful when you do that. And we're going to have 2 more individuals who are going to be joining us.
Check 1 2. Check. Just doing a sound check.
One of our friends is going to be joining us audio only for a little bit because private stuff, right? And then another one will be joining us soon. They're doing work stuff, so one or the other. All right.
Well, if you want to check StreamYard,
sounds pretty good.
My
I think
bookcase will be taking my persona today.
We see you, buddy. It's okay. Thank you so much for being so kind.
I like it.
Yeah. It's nice to
talking bookcase. That sounds like a good premise for a horror novel.
Yeah, actually
the haunted bookcase is going to be talking in my stead tonight.
Sure. So our friend Counter has something he's up to, and he'll be with us on camera soon. So when you hear his voice, and you're not sure, like when you hear a voice, you're not sure where it's coming from. It's probably Counter, coming from you beyond the grave. All right. So let's get started now. Thank you all for being here. Very much appreciate you stopping by. This is the Revelry Roundtable, which we have on Mondays, 8 p.m. Eastern. We have an amazing group of individuals with us once again. I'm very happy to have them around. All right, we'll start with Kyo. Kyo, a very good friend of the channel. Someone I always super appreciate being around. I always love their perspective, especially when their perspective is diametrically opposed to mine. It's just fun because then he's one of I think you're one of the toughest people to argue against because you know your shit really well. And so it's that's why I'm always thankful to have you around, no matter what's part of the argument that you land on. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing okay. I've been off for the last 2 days. I had some training on today, but Queensland went into hard lockdown, so it's been cancelled. You caught me on a day off for once. It's always lovely to come on when I have the chance to. So thank you, and thank you so much for having me on, Prime. Really appreciate it. Love coming to work with you whenever I can.
Awesome.
See, even though I had some technical difficulties,
Kevin
I was able to get on and get streaming.
We're here with us on Saturday, right? Yeah, Saturday. We had a
Yep.
great conversation on Saturday talking about relationships. Guys, you should check out that VOD on YouTube. It was actually really, really good. I had a really
Hell
good time
yeah.
talking with Kevin about that. Kevin, tell a little about yourself.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. So I am the Kevin FM. I talk about law stuff. I talk about history. I talk about whatever really tickles my fancy in that moment. I'm wearing an apron for some reason. And I hope that you come by and take a look at what I have to say. And also, Connor, why did you shave that glorious beard, you jerk? Come
We'll
on.
get into that in a second.
Oh boy.
I think you know what? Everyone's been giving Connor shit for the beard I've seen online. I think he looked really nice with the shave phase. Not saying it didn't look good with the beard.
Thanks,
I
buddy.
think he looks very tidy. You know.
Yeah, I think he's
I think he
handsome no matter
looks
what.
good either way, but
Yeah.
that beard do be sexy though.
The
Oh, no.
beard is sexy. No doubt about it. But I think he's handsome any which way.
Yeah, I
I'm not
mean,
giving
and when
hate.
Fanatic's not here, that's how Prime gets his sex appeal.
Exactly.
He
Exactly
either
how it
needs
is.
that or Fanatic slumped in his chair.
Well, one or the other. Will do
Yeah.
it for us. All right. Why don't we instead go to Malcolm next? Malcolm, haven't had you here in a while. We're happy to have you back. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. The air quality up here is hot dog shit. It's like 200 outside, so can't go outside. So I have a cough, so I'll probably be muted a lot of the time so I don't blow your eardrums out. But other than that, just hanging out, you know?
Okay. All right. Thanks so much. Next, Shadows. Shadows is here with us. Shadows actually had a topic, and he's given me that topic weeks ago, and because of my own incompetence, we haven't actually done the topic yet. But we're doing the topic today. And I'm happy to have Shadows here with us as always. He's a really good guy to talk to. Shadows, tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Obviously, the recently in the prompt doesn't make sense, but everything else still works. So that's what matters. Obviously, for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Shadows. I'm, of course, the libcuck neo-lib shill resident of the Prime Case channel. I love being here on Mondays. I do, some politics. I also play a lot of piano, do some arranging and writing music on stream. Do some Pokemon Nuzlocke too, so we do all sorts of stuff. You can come check me out, and I'm doing especially well today because I'm now able to legally buy beer and rent a car, so that stuff is lit.
Congratulations.
Maybe I'll probably rent a car, maybe, because I'm not interested in drinking. I'm boring like that. But yeah, I'm doing great. Everyone else is doing well.
We have things in common. I actually don't. I really don't want to have a car. I borrow someone else's car. They don't want to have a car of my own because it's just a massive expense that I can avoid it right now. I don't go many places. I don't do many things, right? So like, why have like a car note? Why have the insurance? Why have all of that stuff? And I could just like rent a car or use one of those car sharing services or something, right? Rather than just like having that massive expense just to occasionally go out.
Yeah.
Freedom's
that
good,
makes
though.
sense, honestly.
Yeah.
If you don't need it to get to work or whatever, then why have one?
It's I go and lots of things I can even order in, so it's like it doesn't make sense like that massive expense for me. But whatever. Sorry. Side note. Moving on. We have Amanda Smash. I was gonna say something else, but Amanda is back with us. Amanda, thank you for being here. Amanda's a wonderful mod here on my channel and just a great person all around. And she's got like a lot of interesting expertise when it comes to politics. And I'm glad that despite being a real life like a political person, right, like a professional, that she spends time here with us. I'll say amateurs. So, Amanda, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I feel like I spend more time with you guys than anyone else. But yes, I am Amanda Smash. You can follow me on Twitch or Twitter, as most of you know. I feel like I've said this like every night this week except for yesterday. I am a political consultant with a focus on relational organizing and field strategy. So yeah, hopefully I'll start streaming here soon.
Okay, thank you. Next, Biggs, thanks for coming through. We haven't had Biggs since for a while, actually.
Yep.
But we're always happy when you're around, especially since you don't tend to have a different perspective. How you doing, Biggs?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Prime, for having me on. Shadows walked away, but I was going to wish him a happy birthday, but I guess I'll have to wait to do that. But I do want to say I'm pretty excited to celebrate with you guys because this will be my first stream as an affiliate, as a Twitch affiliate, so I get to share that with you guys. So thank you.
Yeah, dude.
Yes, I'm pretty excited about that. Everybody, you can follow me at Biggs8500 on Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter. I'm a center-right libertarian. I try to focus on like real solutions to the real problems we have. And I think that the topics today are going to provide some good content for us to see how we can like make some real change in this world and really help people out. So hopefully it'll be engaging. And I know Prime's panels are always a little spicy, so maybe we'll get a little spice in there too tonight.
Maybe, just maybe. If we do have spice, it will probably be because of our last, but certainly absolutely not least guest, goddamn VIP here, who is currently a spooky bookcase. Hello, Connor. Connor's a bit busy at this moment, but he still wants to join us. He is that dedicated to being part of this community, and I appreciate him so much. I literally cannot express to you how much Connor's constant participation means to me, right? That he always wants to be a part of this community. It means like it's huge. So thank you, Connor. And yeah.
Oh, my sincere pleasure. So if everybody was complaining that I shaved my beard, I'm sorry to inform you that I am dead. I am now a bookcase, and I'm still in the center, as you can see on your screens right now. So I'm centrist, center right. I get along with liberals and progressives until I don't. And I'm a Marine veteran and a law enforcement veteran, and I am. My wife is currently sick, unfortunately, not COVID, something else. So I'm still in charge of a 4-foot. Ryder, what are you right now? You're a turtle? Okay, I'm in charge of a 4-year-old turtle right now. So I'll be jumping in and out intermittently. Hopefully I can join you guys on camera in the next hour or two once we get them to bed. But very much looking forward to the conversation. And if I interrupt randomly, I'm sorry. It's because I can't see your face. And I want to get some spice in. And Prime, the feeling is absolutely reciprocal. I do love being on here, which is why I'm going to show up until literally I can't. That's when I won't be here. So we'll keep it rolling. Keep the hot streak rolling.
Until his wife gives birth to his next child, but even then, they allow cameras in the delivery room. So
if it's on a Monday, I'll still I'll just bring a laptop into the room. We'll be all right.
Thank you so much. Okay. All right. And like I said, we have one other person who'll be joining us soon. But yeah, we'll get started. So, okay. Topic 1. And this one's provided by Shadows, and we thank him for that. Recently, at CPAC, not recently, Donald Trump made more false claims about the election, which required Fox News to put up a disclaimer about his claims. Donald Trump doesn't seem to be giving up on claiming election fraud. This is both a liability to any cable TV stations who air him. But do you also feel that this is a liability for Republicans? Many conservative candidates still tie themselves to Trump, so they seem to think that he is still a political asset. Do you think the GOP should prevent him from running in 2024, Trump? Do you think the social media bans didn't go far enough, and should he be barred from TV as well? Perhaps, should he be ostracized from society until he accepts the election results? Again, thank you, Shadows, for that. In fact, why don't we start with Shadows, and then we'll get to everyone else for introductions. Please, Shadows.
Yeah, so I basically asked this question because, I know a lot of people, said some stuff about his claims, about, getting banned from social media and whined about that. Don't get me started on that because I will simp for Section 230 harder than Tier 3 substance for Pokemon. So please do not go there. You will not enjoy it because I will beat you to the ground on that point. But yeah, I basically think that, what has happened with Trump hasn't gone far enough. The fact that he still thinks that this is like one of the greatest deals of the century. The 2020 election presidential election is now added to the fucking Wikipedia page for the idea of the big lie next to fucking Hitler. Like, he's not in good company there exactly. So, I think that we need to ostracize this man from society until he learns to, live in reality and accept the fact that he lost and that it wasn't fraud. So, yeah, and, obviously Prime added a little caveat there, which I think is really important, that, a lot of conservative politicians see him as an asset and that, he does have a lot of influence on the party. But there are also a lot of Republicans that disagree and feel like everything Trump touches dies. So I think it is a good question to ask whether or not he is an asset and whether or not the GOP should get involved with how much he is involved with races, whether it's a House race or a Senate race or whatnot.
Okay. So why don't we go in a circle? So we'll go with Biggs next. Biggs, please.
Yeah. So one of the things that I really think as far as Trump goes, I mean, I think it's pretty clear now. We've had court cases, we've had evidence tried to be shown that there was fraud, but there hasn't been any. Right? We haven't seen any actual evidence of any fraud, any type of every step of the way. They're just saying, "Oh, this is going to prove something." It never does, right? Even as a Trump voter myself, I think it's time for Trump to move on. I think he needs to accept that he lost, and that he can use his sway with the Republican base in a more positive way. I think he'd be much more in the right to be maybe doing rallies for other candidates, which he has been doing, but cut out this stuff about the big lie. He can do so much more with just being an advocate for the other Republicans that he doesn't need to talk about this lie anymore. I hope he doesn't run in 2024, but I do think that with this whole thing with like disclaimers put on the news and like on social media and all that, I think that's probably good because, like you said, we don't want false information being passed around, and if he's pushing that, then I think that that's probably bad overall. But I do think that he can use his popularity strategically and help benefit the Republicans. But I think he's going about it the completely wrong way. He's currently harming the Republican Party, and if he continues to do so, I think we should probably try to separate ourselves from that. So,
Thank you so much. All right, Amanda. He's almost got it. Just a second.
All right. Yes. Yeah. So obviously Trump can still, run and serve for another term, seems like constitutionally. And it outside legal troubles and stuff there, and the GOP stopping him. There's nothing anyone can really do about that. I do disagree with Biggs on us seeing evidence, but I think that's a totally different topic. I just don't think we've seen accountability. So the other issue here is Trump is sitting in a relatively good position to run for 2024. So I think it is a possibility that he will, and I don't think that we should ignore it. I think we need to take it extremely seriously. I don't know how exactly. I think we saw, the precedents that he set and the things that he would do to be kind of really scary. And so I think a lot of people that don't support him actually genuinely fear him. On the other side of the coin, though, there's people that genuinely support him because they fear the other side, right? Yeah. So I don't know. I think that him running is awful. Like I said, he basically set the stage to have an administration ran in complete self-interest and to make money while in the White House. I also think it's absolutely awful, all the things that he had said, whether accidentally or intentionally, all his racism,
hey, Matty
homophobia,
Kicks
and
is here.
misogyny. He set a stage and gave a stage to that. And again, whether he did that intentionally or not is another debate, but it happened. So I do think something needs to be done.
Okay. All right. Let's go to Malcolm.
I pretty much agree with most of what's been said so far. Just the idea that banning him or like deplatforming him from social media obviously like is not enough when he still has a really big influence over the GOP and like the potential of running again, things like this. It just kind of is like a bad precedent, and we should probably do more to prevent him from influencing like elections in general and just spreading more bullshit, I would say.
Thank you. Kel?
Hey, so like was already mentioned here, it doesn't seem like the evidence there exists to make any of the claims that he makes. Hasn't made any wins in court cases that were relevant to this realistically. So should we ostracize him? I don't think so. I'm not a big fan of like the idea of like completely outcasting someone from society just because they're a bullshit artist. Realistically, that would outcast about 60 to 70% of society most likely. But when it comes to in terms of like Trump's political power, from memory, and it's been a little while since I've like really done like hard dives on the news. Trump backs a couple of primary candidates, one of which didn't win their election. It used to be the case that a Trump cosign was like a really big deal, but I don't think it's as big of a deal now. If Trump was to run in the primary, he'd probably win it in 2024, but that'd probably end up being a win for Democrats because people at this point, Trump's well is like so poisoned. I highly doubt that people will be willing to go back to it. And people seem pretty happy with Biden, all things considered thus far, looking at the polling. So should we ostracize Trump? Probably not. Is Trump that big of a political player? For the Republicans, yeah, but for the general public, probably not.
Thank you. The Cabinet FM.
All right. So something that we recently learned about with relation to the big lie and the alleged election steal is the fact that there was actually written evidence that came out, notes from the DOJ of basically measures that were taken by the Trump administration to not only continue claiming that the election was stolen, but engage in a soft coup. So I just don't think that for the health of the American Republic, he should really be allowed to be on any kind of platform. And with the multiple criminal investigations against him, that are pounding away in the justice system, I don't think that he would really have much more time left in the public eye anyway, but it's entirely dependent on whether the whether his company's indictment leads to his indictment. But even putting that aside, I really just don't think that banning him on social media is enough. I think that the news just needs to blink him out.
What's up, Rhodes
and
Gold?
just ignore the man because
thanks for coming out.
He's obviously such a cancerous influence.
I'm super excited because I'm
an
affiliate
Republican
now.
Party that multiple Republicans have begun to, really grab hold of this big lie narrative,
err on the side
and
of
continue pushing
him being more responsible. I don't think it's
basically
doing
the
any
seizure of
services to
power
the Republican
by any
Party.
means
Still spouting
necessary.
lies.
Now that's been a
there's
growing
no
cancer
actual
in the
evidence. If
Republican
there's
Party
evidence,
for a
then
long
I'm all
time,
for
but Trump
it.
has definitely
Without
pushed
evidence,
it
I
forward.
just don't feel like there's
So
any leg to stand on.
I honestly
and it's just
don't
going to hurt the
think
party
that,
overall.
America
So if he can be more
should really
strategic and
tolerate
be maybe
Trump
like a
being
torch
around any
passing to like
longer. And
DeSantis
so,
or whatever,
yeah,
I think I'm all for that.
I think that he has a
But yeah, I'm kind of
responsibility that he should have
anti-censorship
followed
as
as
well.
president.
But I just
And
think
he just
he
didn't
needs
live
to
up
make
to it.
the
So,
cognitive decision
to
be
GDFO,
more
and the Republican Party is going
more
to face
productive with
consequences
his
for that.
speeches and his what he's putting
All right.
himself behind
Next,
than
we'll
just
to
causing
Tom,
issues.
your
'Cause
points.
right now it's just making more hate for the Republican Party, which is
Yeah,
just bad overall.
so basically, based on the polling that I'm seeing right now, I believe 55% of the Republican Party still supports Trump. And even out of that 45%, I think there could be like a little bit more of a tepid support for Donald Trump, which kind of sucks. Because realistically, what I want is the tepid part of the party to become more vocal and say, hey, some of this shit isn't acceptable. Some of the shit he did isn't acceptable. Republicanism means caring about a republic. It doesn't mean that we want a new monarchy. Unfortunately, I'm not hearing a lot of those voices, which is part of the reason why I do what I do, is because I want to embolden other people to start articulating those ideas. As far as like what we have to do in order to get rid of Trump, I think that we have to kind of treat Trump as, just the figurehead, but treat the MAGA movement as the real problem. I think we're making a mistake here by thinking that we're like, even if Trump didn't run in 2024, that we wouldn't have a figure like Ron DeSantis or Ted Cruz. seize up on the MAGA war cry and then kind of continue those politics. So if we want to deal with that, then we have to deal with the issues or the concerns of the MAGA movement. We can ignore some of the more nefarious ones and address some of the more serious ones. I think a lot of the radicalization that you see in America for the past, 30, 40 years is largely economic. It could be demographic, it could be racist, it could be homophobic, whatever. But I also think that it's largely economic. If you look at the buying power of a middle-class American family, it's gotten worse. It's either stagnant or non-existent. And we're increasingly polarizing in this economic disparity. I think even 20 years ago, I would have been making excuses for it and saying bootstrap shit. But all I can say is I've been working since I was 15. And right now, I am just now able to afford my bills in my early 30s. That sucks. And a lot of Americans are reacting to this like negative economic pressure by lashing out at their neighbors, by lashing out at their friends, by lashing out internationally, culturally, politically, whatever. That's the pressure that I think Americans are trapped in. So we need to address that if you want to alleviate the war cry of the MAGA party.
Okay. Last but not least, we have our friend Maddie, who's just joined us. Maddie, one, you can give yourself an introduction. You're great, and people should love you. And then two, you can introduce your perspective on the topic.
I'm Maddie. I am a leftist organizer, political activist, strategist, and I stream all the time on panels where I talk about current events, politics, how to get involved with your local politics and other things. So I'm really happy to be here. In the case of Trump making false claims again at CPAC and just sort of continuing to just talk nonsense and perpetuate the lie that he somehow won the election and that all of this is just a gigantic conspiracy. It's really clear that that lie is harmful. It has directly led to violence and an attempted overthrow of the United States government and like a violent attack against elected officials. I am honestly really frustrated that there haven't been as many ramifications for those who supported this lie than there have been. I think they largely haven't been held accountable to the extent that they absolutely should, and that would serve to deter this kind of behavior in the future. I agree with Amanda that I think there is a real possibility that Trump could run again because unfortunately, despite all of this bullshit, he still has a decent supporter network, not only among the base of the Republican Party, but also with elected officials and people in power
I think
of the
people need to
Republican
push back
Party
when he's
in
spouting
general.
garbage.
Whether
like,
that support is out of fear because
right?
they know how popular he is among the base, who's to say? But it's there,
so we'll
and it could pose a serious threat. We already see
it's fine. Like I said,
voting
we don't need to ban people. Like
being
the best
attacked.
way
We already
to
see the Republicans sort of setting themselves up.
Speech is more
to,
better speech,
not
and
only
more productive speech,
cause doubt
and maybe change
or,
minds eventually. But I don't think we're ever going to change Trump's mind. I think he's just an egotist overall. But
whatever way they want
that's besides the point,
That's why they're so reluctant to pass any sort of meaningful voter protection reform. So yeah, it's scary. I think it's good that he was deplatformed, but man, like we're barely scratching the surface in terms of ramifications and like the fallout that should happen, not only for Donald Trump, but for his entire orbit, because like it threatens our democracy, and that's not hyperbole.
All right, thanks so much. All right, let's open to the panel. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to start off by saying too, I do think in general, most type of censorship is usually bad. Like I do think the best combatant for bad speech is more better speech. But I do think when you have somebody as high of office as the president of the United States, I think that will definitely probably have some more caveats when it comes to that type of thing, which is why I think it was probably reasonable for places like Twitter to take him off the platform. But as far as it goes for like cable news and things like that, I think that they need to be careful, but I do think that if we can get people to actually try to convince Trump himself that he needs to do more productive use of his tactics, I guess, and his strategy, I think that would be better all for the Republican Party. But like I said before, I think that what we have now is we have two factions so opposed that nobody really wants to get any real things done. We've seen this with like the committees we have for like the January 6th stuff. Nobody wants to cooperate, and things like that. And like Maddie said, we really need to have these people held accountable. So I think that if we can, as a people on both sides of the aisle, just the normal regular people, Republicans, Democrats, independents, whatever, we can push for things to actually hold these people in office accountable. I think that's overall better for our country, and actually be able to make them make the changes we need, because right now they're just fighting between themselves.
And that kind of seems to be the case, and it's just so unfortunate that. Oh, Maddie, I'm sorry. Did I cut you off?
No, I emote a lot, so me like reacting doesn't mean I'm here to talk. I'm so sorry. I'm a cartoon. I will try hard.
No.
We love you, Maddie. We love you.
Maddie, be you. We need you to be you.
Yeah,
All right, go
No.
ahead, Kevin.
No, it's all good, Maddie. I just thought I heard a noise, so that's why I was checking. But yeah, basically, like, it's just weird because our Constitution does actually have, safeguards for this kind of thing from happening, but I think that with the increasingly like partisan system that we see on Capitol Hill, none of the Congress people really have the political courage to employ that. And I think that's a failing both in terms of Republicans and Democrats. Now, as a staunch leftist, I'm not trying to both sides this argument by any means, but in terms of, for example, even if Trump is gone from the picture, you still have his Weasley little cohorts like Jim Jordan, Ted Cruz. Yeah, Ted Cruz. Sorry. For some reason, my brain thought of Tom Cruise when I meant Ted Cruz, but
Wow, that's a really bad slip there. They're way different.
I know.
I mean, they're both
How do you end up with
they both
that?
suck, but just in different ways.
True.
Yeah. Not too big of a leap there.
One
but
is
go
a
ahead, buddy.
religious fundamentalist, and then the other is Ted Cruz. So when it comes to people like that, they're still in power and they're still firmly cemented in those positions of power. Same with Kevin McCarthy in the House. So really, I think that like the Constitution does provide for expulsion of Congress people. And I think that was exercised only a couple times in history. But there are things that we can do about them if they continue to gerrymander the system, if they continue to, basically play dirty in order to continue getting reelected. Like, do you really think that many people in Kentucky really like Mitch McConnell, for God's sake? I don't think so. But, I just think that people need to grow a spine in both parties and really just fight like they should.
Yeah, so I just want to highlight how important it is for election reform to pass, because the way this conversation is going, it makes it seem like we can out-organize gerrymandering and fraud, and organizing is already really hard, and you see how it's not like Democrats are winning up and down, right? So, yeah, also just want to highlight that the best way to vote is hand-marked paper ballots. So, yay!
Amanda's like singing my gospel right now. I keep telling everyone, I'm like, that should be the most important piece. The Biden administration, that should be like the one thing they really push for, because I'm like, if we could do so much and like pass all this great legislation, but if we don't protect voting rights and we don't reform the system we have to ensure that someone can't prevent, just delete people from the voter rolls and say like, oh, sorry, for no reason, why, if we allow them to continue gerrymandering every single district, especially as we're on the precipice of redistricting, then none of that's going to matter. Because we're not going to be playing on an even playing field. And like Amanda and I are two people that have done like a ton of real life organizing, and working for different campaigns, and like there's there's so much power in organizing, but you cannot out organize like some massive structural forces. Like sometimes at one point, it doesn't matter how well you organize. It doesn't matter how much of a well-oiled machine your organizing infrastructure is if you're up against a massive gerrymandered district, or
Yeah.
you're up against like massive barriers that just keep people from going to vote because they just will keep throwing up those barriers. There's only so much from an organizing standpoint you can do. So at some point our elected officials have to step up and do
And
their
seriously.
job. Yeah.
But I also want to say that we actually did organize around voter rights. I mean, that was a huge thing that was on the ballot, and that was something that we reached out to voters for, and it's something that definitely needs to be delivered on. It's extremely crucial. We, had this message out that, with the census and redistricting. So, yeah,
Mhm.
voting reform now. Biden, are you listening?
Well, I mean,
Joe.
seriously, and it's
Joe.
one of those difficult things. It's just one of those difficult things where, talking about like those huge structural things that we actually need to fix, the legal system hasn't made that any easier to effectuate either. And I'm so sorry. Just speaking as a law dork here, it just really it boils my fish nuggets when I think about Supreme Court cases where I couldn't think of the actual term, I'm sorry, but Supreme Court cases made it basically where gerrymandering couldn't really be legally challenged. At least when gerrymandering is done for partisan reasons. Because, back in the day, there was a case brought before the Supreme Court where gerrymandering, due to racial reasons or through racial lines, was obviously struck down, which is fine. But then subsequent cases brought to the Supreme Court of the United States, challenged gerrymandering that were done, for partisan reasons. And the Supreme Court just held their hands up and were like, oh, no, we're not touching that. That's a political question that Congress needs to address, not us, not little old us. So,
Interesting. That's an interesting
the
take.
legal field made that difficult. And, the only people who could really act is Congress, because they have the check and balance power to that, through checks and balances, they can legislate away anything the Supreme Court determines or anything a president does. So really,
Yeah.
it's just, yeah.
Yeah,
Supreme
I
Court
mean,
ultimately holds what
Mhm.
was it, Marbury versus Madison, that decided that the Supreme Court kind of ultimately has final decision. But despite
Well, it's
having a
not
Supreme Court
necessarily
decision,
accurate, but
I
I'm
know that's
sorry.
a really oversimplified thing, but that's not my point. So like gerrymandering and stuff is not really uh it's not like they purposely write, we're doing this district because it's mostly minority community, right? And each state
It's a
has
little more
different laws.
subversive.
Yeah, and each state has laws that are very different from each other in how to redistrict maps already, and there's ways to get around it.
So
So the process in Iowa ultimately could come down to the Supreme Court, I believe, drawing the district maps if there wasn't a decision made. So, I mean, and if the Supreme Court is entirely Republican and wants to gerrymander the shit out of our state, they very well could then, right? So, I
Yeah.
don't
Well,
want it to
and
seem like it's not easy to do it.
I have a question then, for because we're talking about a lot about like protecting voting rights, whatever, but going back to the topic, like I do worry that Trump could potentially run again. Is that something that's shared? Like, does everyone else sort of worry about the same thing? I know Amanda in her opening
I
statement
do.
mentioned, but yeah, like, and if that is a real concern, like, how the hell do we prevent that? Because
So-
I honestly
Well,
don't
so-
think the GOP will
I
do
want-
a damn thing.
So let's
Here's the
let's
thing,
go
I
to
act-
Shadows and Bigs, okay?
Yeah, so Amanda mentioned that, like, Trump does have a constitutional right to run for a second term because under the Constitution, you are allowed to run for president if you've only served a single term. But the thing is, the RNC is a private organization. they do have the right to bar, certain figures like oh god, there's the guy who ran for Congress in Illinois. I think his name was Art Jones. Like the RNC could easily block Art Jones from running under the Republican Party because you're not going to want a neo-Nazi running on your party. That's not going to look good. It's like no, we're going to stop that. So they could definitely block Trump if they feel like, that's a liability to let him run under the party. But that is like the big problem here is that like if he runs independent, like how many, MAGA people who are part of this, cult of worship for him are gonna, not vote for a Republican? Like, could this considerably fuck over the party? Could he actually start his own party? Is it possible he pulls a Maxime Bernier and just, makes his own party? Like that's an actual possibility to consider.
Can I just correct one thing? Sorry.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it would come up to the states actually to decide whether they can whether they allow someone on the ballot as a Republican or not. And we saw, I think, some of that happen in this past election. But yeah, it's not.
Yeah, they all have their different rules, right?
Yeah, so it come down to states, not exactly the RNC.
It's not up to the RNC.
No,
It's up to each state. So each state has their state Republicans or state like in Minnesota, the Democrats. It's like the Democrat and Farmers Party, but that's like the state party for that. They are usually the ones who determine whether or not someone like is put on a ballot, at least at the primary level. I think Amanda probably knows the specifics better than I do.
Isn't it the state? Not State Department, but like
State
the
legislature?
equivalent that on the equivalent that on in
like
in
their
a state.
Secretary of
Like,
State.
Department of
Secretary-
Elections or Secretary of State.
Yeah, the election person. But isn't that person supposed to be like and you guys correct me if I'm wrong because I could be completely wrong. But like, doesn't the state itself decide this, right? And then
It's
what
different
are
for
the
each state.
it's different?
Yeah, so like in some states the legislature has more power in others than the Secretary of State, whereas in other states the Secretary of State has more power, of course, in regards to voting and things like that. Like here in Iowa, we saw a Republican Secretary of State go against the what the Republicans wanted, and now there's backlash. So while the RNC can't stop states, they can use their influence with funding and not finance or like help out in regards to that or help with a coordinated campaign, so to say.
Let's go to Biggs.
Yeah, so I wanted to touch on Maddie's point with the Trump thing, with him running. Honestly, if I was a Democrat, I would hope that Trump would actually run. I think that because of the amount of backlash and the amount of backlash, especially even after the election and stuff like that, that's happened since then, I think if Trump runs, that's pretty much a slam dunk Democrat win. As long as you put up like somebody reasonable. And my guess, it would either be Kamala Harris or some other, I don't know who else besides her, but even then, I think that as a Republican, I would much rather see somebody else besides Trump. I think Trump's just dead in the water. I don't think if he runs again, I don't think he'll win. I think he's like, why would you want to put a loser up? I mean, honestly, like seriously, like who wants to put a loser up?
That's why he's pushing. That's why he's pushing that lie because he's
Right,
like, no,
but
I'm not the loser.
right, but I mean, like,
'Cause
I
it,
think-
he can't.
He's sitting in a better position than anyone else right now.
So here's
and I get against Democrats, but like, did you like the last election was really pretty close? And like,
It was closer than I think a lot of us even
So
expected.
He would have.
so hold on.
Can I
Biggs
interject
finish-
on that? when you're
One
done?
second. Hold on a second. So who is that? Is that Counter?
Sure was.
Oh, okay. So here's what we'll do. We'll go finish. Let Biggs finish his thought, and we'll have to go to.
I was done.
Malcolm?
I'm good.
Okay, so let's go to Malcolm and then Counter after that. Okay.
a ghost.
You're actually going to where I wanted to take this, and is whether Trump is a liability. This is basically like at the heart of the matter. And I have different opinions than what Biggs said there. I think this is really interesting. So, Malcolm, love to hear what you have to say.
I was just gonna say, like, in response to what Biggs is saying, is I think a lot of the issue isn't necessarily about like a win or a lose for the Democratic Party. It's gonna be like about Trump being able to mobilize people that support him and like share his ideology. Like that's generally the concern, right? Is not that there's like one figurehead, and if we take off the figurehead, the ideology stops. It's that if he has the momentum to like bring people out to support him, that's more the issue that I think people are trying to target with like trying to slow him down.
Can I respond, Prime?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm actually just looking at a poll, right? So I think the majority of people that voted for Biden were actually probably against Trump, right? And right now, what we're seeing in the poll that just came out today from Harvard is that in June, Biden had a 59% approval rating and a 34% disapproval rating. Since then, since they did the poll that they just released today, that has gone down to a 52% approval rating and a 43% disapproval rating. That's a huge squeeze on both sides of Biden. So we're almost to the point where Biden's losing the actual majority of the people that voted for him originally. Okay. What I'm saying about Trump is that I think that if Trump runs again, he's going to reactivate that increase in popularity that was artificially built on people hating Trump and not necessarily liking the Democratic candidate, whoever that might be in the future. So what
But
I'm
that's like
saying,
the point, though.
That's not well. It's not even necessarily accurate analysis. I would probably argue.
Well,
So,
I think it's a strong point. If you guys don't mind me interjecting a little
Go
bit,
ahead,
just
go
because
ahead,
I've listened
Counter.
for a while.
Then we'll go to Kevin and Kill. Go ahead.
Yeah, so basically, I actually think that is a salient point because the way that Trump won in 2016 wasn't because Trump was the strongest candidate that's ever run. It's because people absolutely loathed Hillary Clinton. And then it's the same thing with Biden. Biden, the part of the reason why he was picked was because he was the person that could be stomached. And the reason why Bernie wasn't picked, despite being incredibly popular early on, was because they basically were afraid of pushing out the center. So it really was like a center-left coalition that won, Biden the presidency. And then basically what I would say is if you bring back Trump, you might lose the center again. So I actually think Biggs's point here is actually pretty salient. And then the point that I wanted to make earlier, I wanted to actually piggyback off of what was already being said, I believe, by Malcolm, which is like, hey, like we can think about electoral politics, and if you look at the MAGA faction, you're literally talking about a quarter of the voting population, and you're talking about maybe like 20% of the country. That's still a big fucking faction that carries a lot of weight. And when Prime asks, is he an asset or a liability? The truth is he's both. But unfortunately, he seems to be more of an asset than a liability. So you're going to see a whole bunch of Republicans plugging their nose, either for Trump to endorse MAGA candidates or for Trump himself to run. And that's what you need to deal with. You need to deal with like MAGA rhetoric, MAGA principles, MAGA policy, and trying to attack that and steal from that political faction. Otherwise, this faction is going to continue to exist regardless of Trump.
Let's go to Kevin and then Kill.
Oh, that's an adorable cupcake, Keo.
it's a lovely cupcake brought in by my lovely partner.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I'm a very lucky
Nice.
man.
That's so nice.
Yeah. But what I was just going to say is that I definitely agree with Connor where, I think the danger of just, leaving it up to chance that, Trump may lose if he ever runs again is that, you have to really consider a number of factors when we're going into this. One of the factors is that, of course, there's that MAGA factor, where people get whipped up into a frenzy and, they vote for him if the Democratic candidate is just as bad as she was in 2016. And I mean, I'm not willing to really leave things up to chance with the Democrats because they seem to never learn their lesson.
True.
And then, of course, when
Very
it comes to, the MAGA senators, the MAGA House representative,
I gotta pee so bad.
yeah, the MAGA
I don't
House
wanna
members,
go
and
yet.
then, just many other people who could easily fill Trump's place, but do it more competently. I think that's a great
That's what I'm all about.
danger
I think
that we
Rob
need to
DeSantis
avoid
or Ron
by,
DeSantis is a much better
I wouldn't say stamp out
upside than Trump
the
is
big
now.
lie with force. Like,
But
I
who
don't want to
knows?
come across as like authoritarian, but I think, we need to like make some massive changes to our system. You know, the way that Matty Cakes, the way that Amanda, you know, were advocating for, the way that we need to basically just make it so that our elected representatives have a political backbone and cannot bow to, you know, their financial overlords.
Can I interject
right.
on this though?
Okay.
Sorry, it's just really quickly. It's like you guys keep bringing stuff up. Like we need election reform, and we need to change this, and we need to change that. And no offense, but I think we have like a higher chance of seriously tackling global warming than we do like election reform.
It's
Like
still a
it's not
non-starter.
sexy, it's not easily explainable, it's not a political binary. Like I just don't think that like
It's
while
something
this
that everyone
would
can get
solve
angry
the
about,
problem,
though. It's like an easy bipartisan
can
win.
you? Because like, dude, I am completely flaccid over here. Like I don't know.
No, I actually
When
love
I'm
I mean,
alive,
imagine,
just
I
like a
imagine you'd be
barbecue
dead
right
though,
now.
since you're a bookshelf.
That's
I-
true. I've actually lost my capacity for erections as a wooden bookcase. So that's actually a really good point.
Or
So
you could say you're
Like,
always
I
erect.
think this is very much on the
So,
candidate
hold
side.
on. I
Sorry.
actually I want to interject something quickly. Then I'm going to go straight to you, Kill. I actually love this point because it's something I've talked about many times before. Is that people love to complain about the elections, right? How our elections are run, how they're unfair, how people are get left out, and gerrymandering, and all of that, right? All the issues that we already know. And they'll complain and complain until the moment the elections are done, and then it disappears and it's gone. We don't have a sustained constituency that is fighting for this. It never happens. How long you've been complaining about for decades? Nothing ever happens. As soon as elections are done, people have already forgotten about it. And so, like, I agree with counterpoints on this one. Is that like I don't think it's an issue that we'll see much movement on unless something like Titanic happens. And you would think the election of Donald Trump would have been Titanic, but it wasn't. And still here we are. Kill, please.
Okay, so I gotta respond to the initial point about Trump and 2016 and 2020, and then I'll be responding to the point about election reform and popularity. So I might drone on a little bit. I apologize if that's the case. To anyone who followed the race pretty closely in 2016 and 2020, who was following the polling and the demographics of those polling, what you would actually find
what's
about
up,
it isn't
Buckeye?
just that it
Thank
was
you
like
so much.
anti-Trump, like these pretty
You're
like
amazing.
some of those narratives hold pretty true,
My
right? There are
first
a lot of people who
subscriber,
came out
Buckeye.
pretty hard
Thank
against
you. That's so
Trump
awesome.
in favor of Biden because they were scared of Trump. That's true. But in terms of like looking at
I don't even know what to
demographics
say.
and
This is
shift
like
and
the
who's
first time
behind
I've
what
ever been
candidate, right?
able to
There's a good
actually,
reason
like,
why Bernie in
have something to
2016
show for
did
like a
significantly
hobby of mine.
better
Like, I played
than
Magic
Bernie
the
in
Gathering
2020
and played
did,
video
despite
games, but
having
this is,
more
like,
awareness about who
super
Bernie
awesome.
Sanders was.
Yeah,
And
you
that's
popped
because
my
Bernie
cherry.
had wholesale
Buckeye's my
grouping
cherry
over
popper,
a
everybody.
particular group of Democrats, the white working class,
Awesome.
the poorer
Thank
side
you
of that
very much.
party
Thank you
that
so
are
much.
white and male and angry. Right, they were totally behind him during the primary,
I
and
literally got
it's a group that
my
Hillary Clinton did
bladder
not
is
give a flying
busting.
fuck
I gotta
about.
pee so bad.
And there's a reason why, when you look at the polling back at the time, that group swung so hard for Bernie. And then when you look at the election for 2016, that group came out pretty fucking hard for Trump, right? There's a reason why they lost those blue wall states is because that's the group that came out hard for Trump. They were in for the political rhetoric behind Trump, behind the we're going to bring manufacturing back, but because they care about their fucking jobs. That's what they care about. There's a good reason why when Biden went to run a year beforehand, he was already doing meetings at Teamsters. He was already working with the unions. He was looking to secure that
awesome.
vote. Biden
Thank
was
you
ahead
again.
of the
That's so
curve,
amazing.
looked at who swung, why, and got on top
All
of
right,
it.
I gotta
And
go
that's
pee.
why
I
he
can't
won
hold it anymore.
2020.
I'll be
A
right
big
back.
part of why he won 2020. A significantly bigger part than people give him credit for. Okay, 2020 and 2016 were an election of demographics, and it's an
Luna's
election
not
of
here?
demographics that Biden
Well, what the
won.
hell is he not
right?
doing in here? I'll be
This
right
is
back,
why
everybody.
Biden's rhetoric, especially early on in his presidency, one of the first things he did was swap over one of the chairs of the NLRB, which is something that's like more of an organizational thing, but was promoted very hard, especially kicking out the one that was very anti-union, swinging it very back in the union worker favor instead of the corporation's favor for the NLRB rulings, right? This was very, very important and a big throw out to the Teamsters and the other unions. I mentioned Teamsters because they were particularly the union that was very much the hardest behind Biden and working with him for the most, right? So like it isn't just like, oh, we're scared of Trump, we're scared of this or scared of that. It's worrying about where those demographics are and what we're doing for them, right? It's why the PRO Act is one of the biggest things that Biden put forward pretty early. Even though that thing's dead in the water, that was a really important signal to that base to say, hey, I'm in your corner, I'm working for you, with you. This is important, right? One of the recent things that he did was the 75% American made over 55% American made change that he made recently. This is another signal to that base. Hey, I'm for you. We make shit in America. We buy American, right? Now, I think those policies are very silly. I'm very much for free trade, open trade, globalism, all that bullshit, right? But I understand why he did them because he's particularly targeting that base. That's important. You have to look at elections through more than just narratives. You have to understand the demographics that underlie them because believe me, politicians are. And when it comes to election reform, it's about how it's put forward. Polling consistently shows that everyone is behind election reform. Everyone. But like, from like a union organizer perspective, the thing a lot of people don't get is that how you put forward something forward is more important than what that thing is. People have to get fucking mad about this. Politicians aren't getting people angry about this. This is the one thing that Bernie Sanders did, still does fantastically well, is he gets people fucking mad. He sits there and goes, the 1% of the 1% are taking everything you own and I'm here to get it back to you. And guess what? Trump did the exact fucking thing, except he changed that over for China, right? Politicians just have to be harder behind the reform. The reason why you're flaccid is because they're flaccid. They don't give a fuck about what they're talking about.
Okay, so I love that we're talking about penises here, my favorite subject. But I want to ask Kyo something, and then I'll go to
Sure.
Maddie, Amanda, and Shadows. So Kyo, so like getting your constituency angry about something, yes, that's great, right? But in the end, all matters
you know what I
is
just
people
realized?
mobilizing around it, right?
Because of
Like,
that
we see this
sub,
with,
it's now made
guns.
officially more
So many
profitable
people don't like the
for me
state
to turn
of,
off my minor.
gun legislation.
What's the rhetoric around
Extreme.
guns?
So
Here in
thank
this
you,
country,
Buckeye.
right? Some people don't.
You're amazing.
Don't like people are dying in neighborhoods, right? And
You were
they
the
say
best cherry
something
popper
needs to
ever.
change. However, on the other side, the people who are pro-gun, right, are far more interested. Are
I
far
don't even know
more
what I missed, but I
motivated
don't care because
to
I'm so
actually make
excited.
changes, to actually show up, right?
Thank you.
And push their legislators, right? And so
People's
legislators are
position
more
on
fearful.
gun legislation, win or lose them elections. This is an example that is entirely in my favor.
No, hold on. Yes,
What are you up
exactly.
to this week,
No,
Buckeye?
that's in my favor.
Yes,
Got any
exactly.
fun plans this
Yeah.
week?
It's the rhetoric behind
Actually, I'm not
it.
sure
Everyone,
we're
we're
on-
going to take
I'm not
your
sure we're
fucking
on
guns, or
other
they're
sides.
shooting children in the streets, right? People get mad about
One
this.
of
People
these
care about it
days-
because of the way it's delivered.
Michigan's
Yeah, I
actually
know,
going to
I'm
beat
saying,
Ohio
but I'm
State
saying,
again
okay,
in football.
looking at that,
I don't know when,
It's a fucking
let
United
me
but one of
finish.
these days it's
Let me
going to
finish.
happen.
But looking at that, right?
And then you
that's
can
an
know what it's
example of
like to
people
live with
actually
a
being,
family of
motivated.
in-laws
I'm saying that
that are all
on
Ohio
the
State
election,
fans, and we've
election
literally
reform
won
side,
one out of like
that
the last like
you
11
never
years.
see any of this, and I'm not sure
You don't know
that
how
you
bad that
can,
pain
because
is.
I'm not sure you can get
Okay.
people motivated that way, even if they're saying that they care about this. So having a high polling on this, like that something needs to be done, isn't enough. Is what I'm saying, right? And
Well,
then
the
we
broad
can't really do anything
public
else.
really care about fucking guns, okay? The polling behind guns is a big deal. They win or lose people elections, and in part, it's how it's put forward, right? The rhetoric around guns is a very big deal, when realistically also,
I love
guns are a
guns.
fucking nothing burger. They're a nothing burger, okay? Like,
Yeah, I think they- yeah, it's like eight
in terms
straight.
of
I
like
know.
how much they affect people,
I
like
think it was like
assault
the
weapon
second or
bans,
third
how
year
much
we were
that affects
together,
people,
and we've been together for a long ass
in
time.
the
so-
edges is like nothing, like next to nothing in comparison to something like healthcare, in comparison to something like election fraud, right? The numbers there, those people like
Luke
dying, for
Fickle.
example, is bad. I'm very big in fun with gun control.
Oh,
Everyone
man.
knows this, right? But like realistically, it's something that's worth shelving for Democrats, for example, because of how little people it affects over something like healthcare. When you're talking about politics on such a broad scale, gun control is a nothing burger.
So we'll have to talk about that later. And today, and I don't want to stray too far from the topic.
Guns
But
are
I
base.
think
Fight
it's
Pride, let's
interesting.
go.
So got a lot of people in. Let's go to Maddie, Amanda, Shadows, please.
Yeah. So I want to talk about, we're talking about how whether or not there's any sort of case to be afraid or worry that Trump might run or even win in 2024 and the implications of that. And I just want to say that, like, unfortunately, one thing we can take away from 2020 is that for a lot of Republican voters, more so than I think any of us really anticipated, Trump like fumbling the COVID response and like blatantly and openly violating the Constitution, like, employing his kids in the White House, by enriching himself, whatever. That was still.
I don't think we want to go down the nepotism route.
I'm not. No. Okay, well, we can go down the road when you
I'm just
see where I'm
saying.
going, because when I finish my statement, so we can see, how all these things, that was not enough to convince a lot of voters to
I
vote.
definitely don't think we want to go down the nepotism
Base
pathway.
of support. Those people are going to be reliable Republican voters no matter what. So he has that established base regardless of how badly he fucks up. Now, in 2020, we were able to galvanize support for Democrats specifically because people were worried about Trump winning again, because it came so unexpectedly in 2016. But what I worry about is that after Trump lost to Biden in 2020, I worry that a lot of people will feel less motivated to show up to the polls in 2024 because they view Trump's grasp of power almost as if it's in the rearview mirror. They don't see it really. They think, oh no, we already beat him. We already did that. And it was already that difficult to get people to show up to the polls, especially in states like Georgia and states like Michigan. So I worry that there's not going to be a guarantee that we can recreate that level of engagement in 2024, particularly if we don't do well in the midterms and if we don't give people a reason to show up in the midterms. I
think I'm the only righty really on this panel, to be honest with you.
Surprised with the Biden administration, at least in terms of what they've been able to do.
I think I'm like the only right person,
mean
basically.
That I'm not disappointed that they haven't gone further, but I have to remind myself that then again, I am also like.
I feel bad that my chat's taking up all of Amanda's space.
Like A, the
like
Biden administration, and B, the majority of Americans. So like my measure of success is vastly different, I think, than what their measure of success is. But I worry that like there may be
she's been going on for over 2 minutes now
on the side of the Democrats, and that could pose an issue for allowing someone like Trump to waltz through and run away with an election in the same way that we saw in 2016. Because let's be honest, like 2020 wasn't like a runaway, like slam dunk, like overwhelming victory. It was massive, but like I feel like we're still hanging on by a thread, you know?
Don't you think Trump is
comfort?
Don't you think Trump's hurt his stock though with all the ridiculousness after the fact? Like I just think that's.
I would hope so.
Yeah,
I would hope so, but
I
don't know that he has.
I think.
Can I take?
Go ahead, Keon.
Okay, I'm going to take 2 seconds. I'm going to sidetrack off the topic. I'm going to apologize to the other panelists here. Victorious XB didn't before inauguration Biden attack Syria. I'm pretty sure he hates non-white, non-Americans. That might be the most fucking moronic thing I've ever seen in the Height of Prime's chat, and I've been on Prime's chat for like a year. That might be the stupidest fucking take I've ever seen, okay? If you read anything about the Syria attack, you would have known that it was coordinated with almost every power in the area, including Syria, and you would have known there was a bunch of fucking terrorists, okay? Please, dear God, read the news. Grow your tiny fucking minuscule brain. Learn something. Okay, I'm sorry, go on.
Totally based, Kyosan.
Okay, so
I wish it could sound so sexy when I was angry. Good man.
I know, when Australians are angry, I'm just like, I'm captivated. I'm like, yes, get
Well, they're
them.
constantly on edge from all that shit that can kill them. I mean, they have to be fucking like heightened adrenaline and shit, you know?
Maybe that's it.
Did you see the Australian rugby women's team do their war chant? That shit was fucking intense. I don't know.
That was actually the New Zealanders.
It wasn't? Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. Oh my god, I'm sorry.
Same
It's scary and amazing.
Let's go to Amanda and Shadows.
I kind of lost my point. Sorry, but yeah, no, Maddie did bring up the midterms.
I'm trying to have some fun.
And,
trying to make this fun,
extremely important. Like we have 2 years to actually get, well, not even, to get things done, because that could all change. And pretty much I agree that a lot of it has to do with messaging. I pretty much agree with everything Maddie said. I did have another point. I was hoping that if I talked in circles would come around, and it didn't. So.
Oh, I hate when that happens, because talking in circles helps.
Yeah.
Can I interject, please?
Let Shadows.
I remember my point.
Oh, sorry. Let Amanda finish, and then let Shadows go. Then we'll go to you counterpoints. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, so we have 2 years till, yeah, the midterms, right? We are also forgetting that, like, or not factoring in that people literally, like, change their minds, like, at the drop of a hat. So timing is extremely crucial, and so no one can really predict, who's going to win now. Like, that's just impossible. Too many things go into winning elections, and too many factors can change all of that, like I said. And so I think we need to go into this like he could very well win the election. That's the attitude we need to have. And yeah, that's my point.
Shadows counter.
Yeah, so I think that's definitely true when it comes to like the senatorial races that we need to focus on first in 2022, because I agree with Maddie's point that we need to focus more on the midterms in 22 rather than the presidential race in 24, which is sort of why my question was geared at this, because not only did Trump have this situation at CPAC, but before that, when he was helping
I need to put
a
new
candidate for
subscriber
the spot in
button
North
on my
Carolina,
stream too, but I don't know how to do
it's
that. I'm gonna have to figure that out for
Wisconsin,
next
Ohio,
time.
Pennsylvania, North Carolina. These
Maybe
are the
do
four
new
major Senate
subscriber
seats
instead
that
of
we
new
need to focus on
donation.
in 22. The Democrats
But I'll
could
have to find
possibly
it.
win. And
Script
for
for
that,
that.
North Carolina candidate's race, he said, we're going to win back the
Oh,
House, we're
Big
going
Al
to win back the
followed.
Senate, and we're going to win back the White House.
I didn't know Big Al
we're gonna
followed. I
win
totally
back the
missed
White
that. I'm
House
sorry,
sooner
Big
than you
Al.
can
Thank you
think.
for following.
And the majority of political
I
commentators
totally
heard
missed that.
that.
It must have been
this dude is
in the
literally
bathroom or
stoking
something. I don't know.
reinstatement
Or maybe
talk right
too
now. Like,
jacked up
this is
over
QAnon level
Buckeye's
shit
subscription.
that a former president was stoking on a stage at a speech for like an actual candidate for the United States. Like, this is part of the reason why I'm like, we need to deplatform this guy and ostracize this guy from society, because he's saying so much fucking dangerous shit that he like.
I'm totally looking forward to the next topic, to be honest with you.
The election was stolen and that
this topic isn't really that much.
This dude is literally like balls deep.
Doesn't really get me that excited, to be honest with you.
And it's like actually like concerning that he can't drop this. So
depending on who's running,
yeah,
I'm pretty sure I'd
to, like,
probably
this,
vote for Trump again if he did end up
I
running for
think that
president,
is
just
why,
because whatever
climate
the
condition was actually
Democrats
really important,
would put
because
forward would probably
is
be a
it
shit
an
show,
asset or is it
like
a
Biden or
liability?
Kamala.
I think it's definitely a
I
liability
doubt Biden would
to
ever run
keep
again,
in
but like
radio,
Kamala,
but
like if she
we
becomes
need to care
president,
about
which I
what
think
the
she
RNC
will
thinks,
in the next
what
year and a half,
Republican
but
politicians
who knows?
think. And Connor made the point he's actually both, but he thinks he's more of an asset. And honestly, I kind of just have to disagree there. So I'm glad that Connor's able to go after me. But like, I do agree he's both, but I can't agree with the idea that he's more of an asset. I have to feel like he's more of a liability, especially because these states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Ohio, North
Thank you
Carolina.
guys for stopping in. I really appreciate you guys hanging out.
Democrats
in
can
the chat. It's
definitely
awesome.
win.
I appreciate
not just House seats, but also
Yeah,
Senate
Biden's definitely a
seats.
placeholder for
So
sure.
I
But
think
like,
in
I don't even know
these
who the
states
next
for
in line
22,
is.
He's
Like,
definitely more of a liability.
because it's not. I don't think it's going to be one of the like far progressives like AOC or any of
I
those.
just need
But
to highlight that
hey, what's up,
although we
Liquid
did win the
Sunshine?
Senate and House and presidency, we lost all across the nation in regards to state seats and city council races. So
I also think we
Yep. Which was why we didn't tell people like, where should I volunteer? We're like local, state, like that's where we need the help.
Let's
Yeah,
go.
we do
People
have a lot
always
of
ignore the local
Republicans.
stuff.
Sorry. We got to focus. Go ahead. Shout out Fisher Point and then we got to go to counterpoints.
Yeah, it is true that Republicans do have way too much power in state legislators, but
I think you forgot the slash. It's supposed to be like // and then whatever your command is, right? Isn't that the command?
Democrats were actually expected to gain, I think, 10 to 15 seats, and we actually lost seats. So we still control
You think they're
the
going to
House,
have to
but
platform
we
a female or member
don't
of
have
LGBT?
as many seats as we had in 2018, which is concerning.
Counterpoints.
I don't know. I could see
Yeah,
another
so
white dude,
just to be clear, I
but
think
I
Trump
don't know
is
who it would be.
a toxic asset.
We'll see.
Basically meaning that they can't afford to alienate the MAGA base because the MAGA base is at least, I'm saying this, at least 55% of the Republican base. So they can't say, "Oh, Trump is a piece of shit. He tried to subvert democracy. He's
that
a
4-year-old is
fucking asshole
definitely
who tried
playing
to
a
do a
game on
soft
like
coup."
iPad or something.
You know,
I forgot
we're
what the
trying to
game is
create a
called,
big
but
tent
it definitely sounds
party,
like a
and we're
game.
trying to be more like centrist and enlightened, and we're trying to be more progressive on the LGBTQ
Oh, it's just a
issues and
smile?
immigration.
Well, thank you.
And Trump is just like a throwback to the dark days of republicanism of the
Barry's
past.
here,
Like,
everybody.
they can't come out and say that shit, because if they come out and say that shit, that's literally 55-60% of the party that they're alienating. And trying to drag those people into the future is tough. It's hard. So I just wanted to make that point, that that's why they're not making that argument, and he is more of an asset than a liability, because as much as he holds the party back, he also is literally a majority of the party right now, unfortunately, likes the MAGA message. And then as far as getting Democrats to win the midterms, I have the perfect strategy for you here, okay? Help people get back on their feet, let them go back to work, shut the fuck up about guns, and that's pretty much it. Like literally, that's all you have to do. Shut the fuck up about guns, help people get back on their feet, and let people work. That's it, and you win.
Well,
Amanda
not to-
and
not to-
Maddie, take that to your clients. I'm sure.
No, I
I'll be like,
actually,
you guys, you heard it
Verbatim.
here first.
I actually base that.
Well,
I think
actually,
that- I
that's
mean, I think it is. I agree with what Kaio-san said earlier in regards to tabling it. I think that there's other ways that we can win elections, and one of them might have to be tabling that. I actually think that that would be extremely helpful, and I think we can go back in this fight down the road, but I don't even know if it's a fight we should definitely have. I mean, there's countries that have higher gun rates and way less gun death rates than the US. So
Yeah,
it's a very nuanced topic.
there is
And I
on
agree
a
with
note.
tabling.
Oh, I want to fight you,
Like my
Amanda,
pet
on this, but
subject.
go ahead,
Yep.
counterpoint.
Yeah, this is like my pet subject. So for instance, if you wanted to address, this is something that I think would also
Gun violence.
be really helpful for
Be
Democrats
interesting.
if they wanted to even have the word gun come out of their mouth. Is basically like, what are the factors that we can control besides like magazine limits and like assault weapons bans? One, they're ineffectual. Two, they energize the base that hates you. And then three, like they're largely not going to affect statistics, which basically means that your political opponents view this kind of rhetoric as when you give a mouse a cookie. If you let the word gun slip from your mouth, then what you need to talk about is like improving schools, improving education, improving social programs, improving American families, making sure that people have a living wage so they don't feel like they have to turn to crime. That's how you need to talk about, I hate to say it, but you need to talk about the material conditions, not whether or not fucking Jeb can own a fucking AR-15. Because Jeb, if you talk about taking Jeb's fucking AR-15, he's going to show up to the fucking polls.
Just on a quick note, like there's a direct correlation between like amount of guns in circulation and gun deaths. I would hope that I don't have to point that out. It feels like it's almost intuitive.
you do.
But like,
Unfortunately,
I don't want to.
It doesn't matter.
Get distracted because we're gonna.
but like,
Because I'm
yeah,
gonna fight. I mean, we could start a fight on this, but like, because I disagree with some of this, but like, I want to stay focused on the topics. I think there's still a lot to be mined here. So,
I did
Kevin,
Oh, okay.
did you have? Well, Kevin.
Yeah, I was going to respond to Connor real quick, if that's okay.
All right, respond quick. Then I'm going to Kevin, please.
One thing I was going to say is that, like, for like 9 out of 10 of that stuff, Biden's doing it. Like the American Family Plan, the child tax credit, I think is like the really big one, and the way that they're setting that up is like a really
That's
good. It seems to be
bad.
targeting exactly the right
They're
people.
giving people
Most of
free
what they're
money.
doing
It's
seems to be targeting
bad.
exactly the right people. I just as Biden. I
Bad,
don't know
bad,
why this is
bad,
like his
bad,
pet
bad.
project. Why he feels so fucking strongly about this. But I wish he'd just shut the fuck up
Q-san
about assault
on
rifles.
another
Please,
stream
just shut the fuck up.
was talking
you don't need to talk
about
about guns. You don't need to bring it up.
was
It
talking
doesn't
about
need to happen.
possibly
Okay, I'm very
debating
in favor of
somebody
gun control,
about
but Biden just seems to be
anti-nuclear
obsessed with it.
because it's banned and like illegal
you're right,
in Australia.
And if Biden
which is
can shut the
ridiculous,
fuck up
but
about
whatever.
guns, and if leftists can stop tweeting about like fucking white genocide and Mayo-cide on Twitter, you guys have a real chance.
Oh boy! All right, let's go to.
I had some
Kevin,
mayonnaise
and then,
today
was it
on a
Maddie,
BLT, as a
Amanda,
matter of
and
fact.
then,
Extra mayo.
Thanos, and then Amanda.
Extra fucking mayo.
Thank you.
I
So
like Kyo-san.
basically,
I mean, I know he's a non-US, thinks about
what
gun laws in the US, but
that's
still
right.
like
What I wanted
Kyo-san.
to touch on basically is just
he's a pretty cool
I want to
cat
share a
overall.
little bit of a story. So I relate to the octopus very well.
Of course,
And-
you do. Sure. Where else would this go? Sorry. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I
guy's
have a
amazing.
point, sir. Thank you. But I was actually vibing with a lot of what Connor was saying because despite being a spooky bookshelf, he has a lot of wisdom in terms of just how much of a grasp Trump has on people around the country. So QAnon is a big problem. And a lot of the things that have basically cemented themselves around Trump have become a huge problem. I have a QAnon uncle. He believes that the election was stolen and that's a reality. Just like he believes that Obama was not actually born in America and that he was bringing the gay agenda, forward and all that stuff. So no matter how much I would try, which I don't try very hard, mind you, you can't really shake those brainworms loose once they've gotten in there. And it's a sort of cult-like mentality, unfortunately. So, I think that in terms of what the Republican Party is, I think that it's just very difficult to really separate Trump from the Republicans because of the fact that he's ingratiated himself and his cult of personality so much into it, where even if you try to ban the man himself, that isn't really going to do much in terms of, you know, cutting, basically cutting loose the cancerous influences that he's already seeped into the party. And that's why the octopus is relevant, because he has already wrapped all 8 of his arms around the Republicans. And so I think that the reason why people are shouting so much about electoral reform is,
Trump is the
it's not a
octopus.
sexy subject, so I'm not going to hammer on that for so long. Like, that kind of stuff's important, but I also think that the Democrats need a massive change as well, just because, and this was alluded to with the gun topic, it's just not fun seeing the Republicans run, no offense to Republicans in here, a loony every time an election pops up. But, then you see Democrats just wheel out, Mr. Joe Mayonnaise from, I forget where I was going with this, but Joe Mayonnaise from the
Wow.
cardboard factory, not really appealing to anyone
Falling
or
off
anything.
the edge of a cliff,
So,
apparently.
the Democrats also need to have a huge change in direction and actually, grow a spine if we want to really meaningfully deal with the Trump problem.
So, okay, thank you so much. All right. Akil, I see your hand up. I'm going to put you on the list. And we'll go to Maddie, Shadows, Amanda, and Cal. Oh, and then Diggs.
Quickly, just say too, because I think that the discussion around and this is not what this subject's about, so I just want to speak on it quickly and then move on to what I really wanted to say. But actual small, there are certain gun control reform issues that all the polling and messaging that we've done, and there's endless fucking research on this, it's actually widely popular across the aisle, so it's also popular with the majority of Republicans. And that's not something like banning assault rifles, but things like universal background checks, mandatory waiting periods, etc., and making that more standardized is something that actually is widely popular. And in certain areas of the country, now granted, it's where us coastal elites are, things like gun control are something that someone can run on and win and give you an advantage. But I understand that is not the case across the country. I have a lot of family in the Midwest, and they like hunting, and you will not be taking their guns that they use for hunting. So I get that. But I agree that it's really frustrating on the Democrat side. I think they are stuck in this mindset of the late 80s through the late 90s, where it's this sort of Reaganism light, where they don't want to turn off any of these mythical undecided moderates. And in doing so, only further disenfranchise and alienate what should be their core base of dedicated Democratic voters, which are people who are marginalized and who suffer the most under this system. And I think, it all sort of, when you look at the trends of the last few decades in terms of wealth distribution in our country, in terms of opportunity, upward mobility, it it's frustrating because I think one thing Bernie Sanders, as it was spoke to earlier, did really well is he tapped into that discontent that's brewing among everyone who has lost their job, hasn't been able to afford health care, who is seeing their rents skyrocket, even if they are lucky enough to have a job but have had their just stagnant wages.
Foreshadowing.
He was able to tap into that and show that these more quote unquote like liberal or progressive policies actually do serve to help those people, and they specifically target those people. And I think the Democrats would serve themselves better to build their entire platform on a foundation of like bottom up, catering to those interests and being a party of the people, of workers, versus like, I don't know, they try to kind of have their foot on both sides, where they're like, oh no, but we're for everything. And I think that only further dilutes their messaging and makes them seem less trustworthy. That's why people keep associating them with like being corporatist. So it's a messaging issue. It's, I think, something that most organizers and activists have been like screaming at the Democratic Party for ages. But on the plus side, that's also why I'm happy that a lot of campaigns are starting to focus more on like being open that they are not taking corporate donations, that they're not taking any sort of like PAC money, and that they are only taking small dollar donations, because even if it's just like a posturing sort of thing, that messaging matters. And like, I can tell you, in talking with like thousands of voters over the last voting cycle, that's something people remember, especially if the campaign advertises it. That's something they remember, and they will call out when you discuss potential candidates with them. So yeah, the Republican or the Democratic Party just needs to like get its act together and get better messaging.
Shadows, Amanda, kill Biggs.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to. You were talking about like how like I don't think the thing is, I know what you're saying about like both having their feet in two different places, and the messaging. I mean, personally, I kind of see the direction the Republican Party is headed in, and I actually followed CPAC kind of well, and there was a shit ton of trust busting stuff. So I kind of like to at least have one party that's kind of corporatist, and not have both of them go anti-corporation, because I really have a problem with that messaging. But that's a topic for another day. But I think when it comes to like the messaging around guns, I do kind of want to echo Connor's point, because I do think it is, you know, a good idea to, you know, care about getting people back on their feet and shutting the fuck up about guns. Because I think when it comes to that stuff, I think you can be in favor of helping these marginalized groups, helping people get back on their feet, and not having to talk about guns. Like, yeah, it's true that there are Republicans who are in favor of a mandatory waiting period, who want universal background checks. But I'm not sure if this is the best senatorial cycle to, you know, do that. Just considering the states that we're vying for, that, you know, have a good amount of rural voters that could swing in our direction. I think if we talk about, you know, helping out people and helping out farmers and, you know, the average worker, and not talking about guns, I think that helps us. I think if we start talking about guns, I think some of those voters in Pennsylvania and North Carolina might turn away. And that's, you know, like just the fear I have. I'm a very optically focused person, so maybe that's me being a little bit, you know, autistic, but hopefully not.
Whoever's typing, if you could mute yourself.
Oh, sorry, that's me.
No, not a problem. Of course it's you though. Anyway, moving on. Thank you. We'll go to Amanda, kill Biggs.
Yeah, I love that Maddie brought up the bottom up strategy. I utilize that in my relational organizing field plan. I think that this conversation is extremely nuanced, and we'd have to like isolate people within their demographics in order to talk about how to change these voters. And I think that's something that really needs to be done. And I think that there are some states that are actually making change within this. And listening to, you know, the candidates that are running, because, you know, they're running in the area that they're coming from. So they know what type of messaging works in their own community. Yeah, so that's my point.
Great. So let's go to Kyo and Biggs.
All right, cool. So am I clicking? I think it is. Okay, cool. So the first thing I want to sort of note is I hear a lot about Biden is kind of like poo, kind of meh, kind of whatever, that nobody really likes Biden that much. This is like really like I don't want to say it's like we talk about politics a lot and we get ourselves involved in politics a lot. It's part of being online, terminally online, one might say, right?
I agree with that.
But for a lot of people, they really, really fucking like a Biden. A lot of people really harken back to that like older style of politician who's here to tell you everything's going to be okay. It's fine. We're working on it. Who wants a calmer style of politics? Bernie Sanders doesn't appeal to everyone. I really like him. I think he's fucking sick, right? I love that he gets up there. He's like the 1% of the 1%. It makes me really happy, right? I fucking love hearing that guy talk. Gets me jazzed up. He gets real angry. It's great. A lot of people don't want that. A lot of people don't. A lot of people want that like very calm, slow-talking guy. To a lot of people, Biden significantly appeals to them more than Bernie. He's not just a cardboard cutter, as I mentioned before. To some people, he's a really stand firm, collected kind of guy, right? And I think a lot of people have to like understand this, is that everyone has their like the average voter isn't an average voter. There's everyone that has their own certain preferences. So the way that we like talk about certain politicians, we have to understand there's like there was an old saying like in like 4chan circles when I was younger, right? It's like it's about like self-confidence, where you're someone's kink, someone finds you attractive, but this like appeals like to politics, right? Where there are people who find like these politicians are exactly what they want, right? And on a note like this, right, I wanted to note that the Democrats just are big tent by nature, unfortunately. That the Republicans are pretty small in terms of like their groups. They don't have a lot of groups to attend to, whereas like when it comes to the Democrats, you've got the working class, the union people.
I'm going to push back against Kyosan
predominantly white working class. You've got black working class, black workers like POC. You've got Hispanics, not so much Cubans, but like you've got women particularly, you've got educated people along with those like people who are uneducated, right, in the unions. You've got to appeal to so many people if you're the Democrats. It is a wonder that they are able to keep everything together. The thing that really amazes me about the Democrats is they're so big tent, but everyone votes so hard in line. You can look at people who vote outside of party lines, and guess what? Manchin is like 7th or 8th down that list, okay? They keep incredibly tight. And then further down that, Manchin is the one who does it the most, like 13%. And then you go further down and it's like 3 or 4% the next one, right? And then down from that is Cinema, who's the third most, who does it at 1 to 2% of the time, right? Like I don't like any of those people. I don't like their politics, but the fact that they vote so tight with the party and the Democrat Party votes so tight as such a big tent movement is amazing. And the fact that they're able to win so many elections while having to have such a jumbled platform is like so incredible. I feel like people like Pelosi don't get enough credit for how much she does in terms of political strategy to keep all of that tent together. It takes a big work, a big effort. On the note of like PAC money's fine from all research, but like Maddie's 200% right and Amanda's 200% right. The posturing is what matters. Being able to go out and say to voters like, hey, it's look at this person, they haven't taken any donations from big people. Like we know from PAC that the PAC money doesn't actually have an effect on how they vote, but people don't care about that. They care about if they're politicians in their interest, right? And in terms of like the gun messaging, it just feels like sometimes Republicans will take a mile on anything. As much as like I'd like to say, yeah, let's do background checks, let's do all of this stuff, I'd love to see like popular gun reform go through so you can put in more gun reform. It just feels like you say that as soon as you say like, yeah, we'll do like background checks, it'll take like a couple of days, we'll give a lot of money to them, and then the Republican comes, he's like, they're taking your guns, and that's it. You've lost.
So let's go to Biggs, and then Amanda, did you have your hand? I'm not sure. Amanda, and then Shadows.
All right. So I just want to first off start by saying that the data does not support you, Kyo, right now. Biden is falling. His popularity is falling extremely
Have you looked
quickly
at it in comparison to every other president of the United States?
So, okay. So if you look at the actual data we have currently, but from Harvard,
his approval rating's falling. Yep.
It was not only falling, but in the last month and a half, it's fallen 7% from approval and gained 9% in disapproval. I would say that's a pretty significant.
Comparison to recent presidents.
I I'm just looking at it for what we have
There is
now,
one
right?
person who is above him in terms of approval, two people who are above him in terms of approval, right? And that is, one of those is George Bush, who was significantly below him until 9/11, and the other one is Clinton,
So,
whose
what you're
approval rating
saying-
seems to be so far out of the norm that he was the only president to gain approval consistently over his time in president. I have no idea what that
Thank you,
magic that
Spiritual
man
Melee.
has.
I
Okay,
appreciate it.
He's
Your
also the
host.
only
all other
president
presidents
got
at
added
the-
to global
Wait,
law.
so,
He's
so
okay,
but I want to say,
on it.
okay, just because it's normal for presidents to lose popularity, right? My whole
Biden has
point
lost
is
at a substantially slower rate and then compared to all other presidents.
okay.
There's a reason why you
So
look at
what
data
I'm saying,
comparatively.
no, I'm not saying overall, and since he started, but I'm saying in the last month it's dropped off dramatically. This 1 month span is a dramatic drop off. So now, whatever that is, because I think what happened was that people were very pleased with the continuation of the Project Warp Speed with getting the vaccine out and getting that to as many people as possible. I think we've done a reasonable job. I know there's been some hesitancy from various demographics to get the vaccine.
You would have to be cherry picking here, by the way.
What do you mean?
I'm looking at 538. I don't know if you're looking at a particular poll, but Biden's approval rating has been very steady.
So
And
I'm looking at the
polling
poll
is
released today
useful
by
for, like,
Harvard. Okay,
trends,
I'm literally
not,
going
like,
with the most
Yeah,
current
so you
thing.
look at there's a reason why you look at polling aggregates. Just because you can be cherry picking, like it's not cherry picking
Sure.
data so much. I don't know if
Sure.
you're doing it intentionally,
So-
but like you can be picking out like it could be a particularly bad poll. There's like reasons why that can happen. I know that like
Yep.
some places are better
this
than
is the
polling than
general.
others, but
This
you look
okay.
at the
So I just
aggregates.
want to say, like, do you agree that his approval rating and his disapproval rating are squeezing, and it's being it's a negative effect on his overall efficiency, right? Would you agree with that at least?
The first part about it squeezing, yeah, that's just factually true. Squeezing in comparison to other presidents, no, I would absolutely
I'm
disagree.
just talking
Biden seems
about
to be holding
him,
significantly
right?
good. The reason why you look at it comparatively is because you want to see how he's doing compared to everyone else. Because otherwise, like, you can just always say, yeah, they're
That's
always
important.
popular, getting more unpopular, getting more
Every
popular. Like, you can say the
situation's
same thing about
different,
fucking Trump.
Kiosin. Every situation's different, right? I think that what happened with Biden was that he was artificially inflated in popularity because everybody hated Trump, which is why I'm saying that when from the Democratic side, I would be ecstatic if I was a Democrat if Trump ran again, because one, he's a loser because he lost, right? And two, because it's actually been a net negative since he was actually the president to begin with. So you're actually starting ahead of the game, right? But what I want to say here is that from what we're talking about, the original topic, which is the whole like censoring and stuff like that, and the media and all that, I think that, again, I'm against censoring for the most part, but I do think we need to have more caveats when it comes to holding people responsible for what their information, especially if it's misinformation or not backed by actual factual evidence, because I'm all about factual evidence, which is why I was trying to point out this study. Obviously, there are aggregate studies and stuff like that, but I was just trying to find the most recent study from today to make that point.
So I'll be very clear, right? Is that like
Did you
here's the
read
thing
through
you
the
could say.
methodology?
But it's
I
not
was
just that. Like, it's a toxicity that is amplified and given a platform too. So, like, let's say worst best case scenario, possibly, right? He runs and loses, but he had that entire platform again.
So let's go to. Oh well, you already had that, man. So let's go Shadow Say.
So I want to respond to this idea of like, if I was a Democrat, I'd be ecstatic. First of all, I understand what Biggs is saying, because there are a lot of Democrats who would be like, oh my God, this is a fucking cakewalk now that Trump has decided to run and he's not running as a Republican. There are a ton of progressive and lefties who would have like 3,000 would have like a massive wet dream if they found out about that in the news. Like, they would just have their sheets would be white in the morning if they went to bed reading about that article. Because like, yeah, it would just be so easy. But the thing is, I'm pushing back against this because I feel like it sets up a precedent, and I feel like if he does that, he's not just gonna like run as an independent or some shit. The dude's gonna create like a MAGA party or an America First party. The idea of an America First party makes me want to throw up in my mouth and shit my pants at the same time. Because I don't want people like Nick Fuentes and Donald Trump to like have their own fucking party. Like, that's scary as fuck. And that also just, because of the MAGA base, which is something we're talking about. This is what Connor was talking about. Like, they are 55 to 60% of the Republican base. You just turn the entire Republican Party into obscurity if that happened. If Trump also runs in 2024. And the thing is, I actually would like another party to,
Barry.
actually, force the
Barry's
Democrats
here.
to be optically smart and be moderate on positions. I like that. Please and thank you. So yeah, I mean that's the only reason why I'm pushing back on that. If that does happen in 2024, yeah, it's probably going to be a cakewalk, and we'll get another, term of a Democratic president, which would be nice. But still, at the end of the day, I think it is important to focus on how this affects 2022. And like I mentioned with the North Carolina campaigning he did, I don't think that that's going to be out of the norm if he continues campaigning for candidates. I think he will do more of this shit where he's like, the election was stolen from us. He might stoke reinstatement talk another time or two. He's going to, continue being this crazy QAnon fucker that he is, because he's a literal megalomaniac. He's literally Hitler, but orange and ugly. Like, this dude is a serious problem for this country.
Okay.
And I yield my time.
Oh boy.
I love it.
So who wants to jump in? I have something I've been trying to say. Malcolm, keep your hand up. I want to make sure I'm not missing him.
Oh no,
I
I
mean-
just had an itch. Sorry.
Okay, no
Yeah.
problem.
Seek your heart prime.
Just assume that I'm always ready to go. Okay.
Are you
All right, go
talking
ahead.
about Shadows, or who are you talking about?
Yeah. So
Miguel?
basically, like, yeah, and this is what I'm trying to communicate to y'all. And if I sound like a broken record, I'm sorry, but it's like Trump is not necessarily the problem. I grew up as a Republican. My parents came, I was basically born in Mass, and my parents said, like, yeah, sure, this country has its problems. Republicans might be viewed as the bad guys or whatever, but we're not racist. We're not, sexist or assholes or whatever. And they're Christian conservatives. So we were kind of, always a little liberal despite being Republicans. And when people talked about basically the Tea Party before the Tea Party existed, or the Tea Party demographics, or they talked about MAGA before MAGA existed. Well, I was like, I'm not like that, and I'm a Republican, and I'm, my parents aren't like that, and they're Republicans, and like all this kind of shit. And what I'm telling you is that the centrist and moderates can't come over to the left, whether that's Democrats or leftists. We just can't. There's too much that we don't agree on. But what needs to happen is we need to look at what is driving MAGA that we can compromise with and what we can't. So if you can't compromise on LGBTQ issues, don't. If you can't compromise on, like immigration reform or whatever, then don't. But at the same time, like vilifying these people as like fucking, Nazis, fascists, whatever. Like, even if you think that's true, like, do you think that like these people, like calling them like fucking manipulative, evil, like Trump's a different story, but calling his base a bunch of evil twats? Have you seen what that's done over the past like 5-10 years? All it's done is it's absolutely
kid.
solidified their
He's gotta
fervor.
get,
It's
more-
reinforced their victim complex. It's reinforced their
focused and lasered in.
martyr and persecution complex. So clearly, like whatever this is, like the solidifying of the
I
polarities,
just want to thank
is
everybody
not
for hanging out
working.
with me tonight.
And I'm not saying
It's been
everybody
amazing.
communicated with. I literally have a fucking
I enjoy
brother-in-law
streaming
who is
and I've kinda
anti-vax,
put
and he's
some of
asthmatic.
my own money
Okay,
and getting
like I
like
can't
lighting
tell you
and
that
a
all of these
real
people can fucking
microphone
read,
and things like
but
that.
some
and
of them can.
it's nice that
And
it's finally
that's what
paying
I'm trying
off
to
with
ask
getting affiliate
lefties
and
and
being
progressives and
invited to
liberals
more
to
panels and
consider is
stuff. And like,
what can you
I
compromise
just love
on, and
talking to
how
all
do
you
you communicate
guys
that to a right-wing person
and girls
in a way that is
it's just
actually going to
awesome.
appeal
So
to them?
thank
And
you
I'll
all.
leave
And
it
I
there.
want to give another special shout out to Buckeye. Thank you so much for
I think that
giving me my first sub,
I mean,
making it official.
I
I'm
think
getting
everyone's
paid to do a hobby,
had
and it's
really
amazing,
great
and I love
points
it.
here.
Thank
I
you
guess
so
I'm
much.
leaning more towards Connor. I think Trump is just, for Republicans, he's just like the most dynamic figure they've had in so long.
True.
Right? Like,
Yeah, when the alternative is Ted Cruz, yeah.
or Jeb Bush, right? Jeb
Or
right?
Jeb.
Yeah.
Please clap.
Republicans are boring.
I
That
still would
please clap thing makes me so sad because everyone was like literally erupting for the dude, and he was like, "Come on, I'll tell you when to clap at the end. I need to talk." And then everyone's like, "Oh, look at how sad Jeb is," and I'm like, "Oh God, no!" That poor
So
dude.
funny.
Yeah, I know, right? So, but in comparison, still, like beyond that, in comparison, I think Trump, like he has this magnetism about him that is second to none in the party, and he just barely lost, just barely. It was like 43,000 votes across the country, right in like the swing states, right? Is how he lost, and he might have lost, which is funny. People speculated he might have lost because he kept saying mail-in voting was terrible, and that the people who mail-in voted were Republicans, and they might have scared them away, so he might have lost because of that. But like he was so close, right? So when you call him a loser, right? I call him a loser because fuck that guy. But like
Yeah.
electorally, I
Yeah.
don't see there's any reason why he can't win in the next election, right? I think that he has an excellent shot, especially if I don't see the Republicans putting up anyone who is quite like him. All they'll put up is the people who lick his boots, right? So the Republican governor of Florida, right? Ted DeSantis, yeah.
Oh, he doesn't lick his boot. He deep throats it. Let's be real here.
It's his boot, exactly that. No, you're exactly right.
He's swabbing that knob so hard, like it's
One
a
thing I
little
do wanna
gross.
say-
Like get a
yeah.
room.
Oh no.
One thing I do want to say is like the America, like, is it like the
It's
idea
so
of the
funny.
America First movement like is Trump? When realistically, a lot of those people have distanced themselves from Trump at this point. They have a lot of other people they're in for, like all the like young groupers fucking hate Trump at this point. They think he's a traitor, right? Is it those disaffected kinds of people still exist? They're just looking
Antithesis,
for
do you
a
say
more-
that just because I wiggle a lot? Oh
What?
shit! Sorry, I thought my mute.
Whoops.
Yeah, so the thing I was going to say was that those that disaffected 55% aren't
So
necessarily
funny.
even behind Trump. And like I mentioned at the very start of this, Trump, here's what he means might be waning out. Like I said, that recent primary where the candidate he backed lost out to a more establishment candidate. Trump's endorsement used to be a big thing that secured primaries for people. Like full stop. You got the endorsement, you were done. You didn't have to do any more work. And now that's just not as much the case. So I would like to think, maybe I'm being a little bit more idealistic here, but I think Trump's star is like starting to fade. But the thing that scares me more is that 55% might latch onto someone who's significantly worse.
And someone who's like competent
Oh
in
God.
their authoritarianism. Like that was also why I
Yeah.
worried. People were like, we just need to get rid of Trump. I'm like, if we do that, we also need to get rid of Mike Pence because like, look, he's like a tall glass of milk, but like he at least like knows how to work the different mechanisms of government to implement like truly harmful policy. And that's something that Trump's ego and like dumb massery likely like got in the way of. And I worry that like we'll get someone who is just like his politics are just as bad, but then also they'll be more competent in how they wield their power.
You guys, can I please? Because this is like you're stealing. I've been saying this for probably like 3 or 4 years now. I'm not worried. Like I was never really worried about Trump because, like you said, he had like negative policies or whatever, but oftentimes he would trip on his dick while implementing them. Whether you're looking at like the Muslim ban or the wall or anything like that, a more cunning. More intuitive political operative probably could have gotten those things done, but he turned everything into a PR fight. And as a result, like if he was doing some of that stuff quiet on the back end while he was distracting the public with a different fight, he might have gotten more done. But because he always turned everything into a front and stage like PR fight, he basically lost. So I'm not worried about Trump. I'm worried about a competent Trump. And basically what you've done with the MAGA movement is you've created a younger generation, whether they're actual like Christian nationalists, like Groypers, or whether or not they're just like more like I don't know, like Zuby or
Zooby Zoo.
CG
Zooby
Bryson
Zoo.
or whatever, or like these people who like, oh, I'm not racist, I have a black friend, but I don't think cops do anything wrong. Like that kind of shit. Like regardless of what faction they are in the MAGA movement, whether it's just like pure right-wing reactionary bullshit or if it's like actual Christian nationalism, there will be somebody in the next decade who is going to operate in such a way as to be a competent version of Trump. So that's what I'm saying is like what the left and progressives have to do. Sure, focus on electoralism. If you can get some like election reform passed, sure, whatever, super happy. But what you have to really do is focus on like the symptoms and root causes of these problems, because if you don't address those problems or get these people to shift slightly more progressive, then basically you're going to be dealing with this base for the next 30 to 50 years. And I just don't think you're ready for it. So, yeah.
I mean, it's
think
probably
I
going
mean,
to
at
take
least-
that
like.
is absolutely true,
Mhm.
though.
Well, oh, sorry, go on.
I was gonna say, I think that you can go actually.
So to me, it seems like the MAGA movement was sort of born out of that charisma. That there was like a group of people who were worried about like jobs going overseas, and they were sort of behind Trump, and then the rest of them sort of started to line up. Like we understand, like partisanship is like a hell of a fucking drug. People will line up behind like a partisan leader. Especially like we saw it with Trump. Like the people who were polled beforehand didn't have these positions, and afterwards, since Trump came out, Trump was the leader of the party. Everyone gets in line behind the leader. The partisanship worked, and it was pulled in, right? Especially with the amount of like Republicans who were behind Trump and said that the January 6th coup was okay, right? What it's going to need is for the Republican Party to get another charismatic person to center it back in, for them to pull their shit back in. They can lead those voters by the nose because they were led in the nose in the first place. I do not believe that those people were just there hiding. I don't think that's the case. I think those people have been like led by the nose to think these things are okay, to sort of like come more in line against their cognitive dissonance with the party, like getting up and rally behind the leader effect. And what they need is just another charismatic person to pull them back in to be a bit more moderate. But I doubt that's going to happen because the Republican Party are a boring sack of old potatoes.
I kind of think we're beating a dead horse with this topic. I'm ready to move on to the next
shadows.
one.
So, something to keep in mind, because I know this was mentioned more than once, the special House election where the Trump-endorsed candidate lost to the moderate Elsie. The candidate, Wright, Susan Wright, who's endorsed by Trump, that was the husband of the Congressman Ron Wright. And guess why Ron Wright is no longer in office? He died because of COVID. So, this is a very special
him,
situation
that's
where
right.
Trump's mishandling of COVID and his messaging around COVID was, a big part of it. And he had awful messaging. He said it's the same as the flu up until, mid-April. And that was like, he was saying it's the same as a flu 2 days up until he said states have full authority, which he should have said after the first COVID death. But so it's a very special case, but it's also because I remember seeing this, and there's someone who invoked Rick Wilson, who wrote a book about this Trump. It's called "Everything Trump Touches Dies." A Republican strategist gets real about the worst president ever. If anyone's interested about it, I think you can get it on Amazon.
What are you guys all thinking?
Yeah, I think I've
How's
read
everybody
that
doing
one.
tonight? I hope you guys are all doing
yeah,
well.
it looks like an interesting.
Doing pretty good. I'm getting a
book.
little
I haven't
tired,
read it,
but we still got a whole other
I would
topic to
definitely
go.
recommend
But
it to people who are interested in that.
this is the
and
second
how there
topic.
are
Is the one I was more
Republicans who are
excited about, to
pushing
be honest
back,
with you.
Against that. So I just wanted to put that out there about that election. That was very special because not only is it the wife of the former candidate, but it's also like Trump's handling of COVID played a big part.
I don't know
into
if how many voters are out there going like fucking dude, his candidate died of COVID and Trump was behind that, like he didn't agree with COVID, like I don't know if I could vote for this person. Like no, I don't think like the average voter is like going like that.
What I'm saying is most Republicans would not care about Trump's mishandling of COVID. Like this
Yeah, so
would
what's that
not
gonna
would
have
not
to do with
play any
primary
part
then?
in most other House elections. It only did in this one instance.
Yeah, I'm just like I don't know if like the people who would have been behind that person would have changed their vote if like Trump hadn't mishandled it, or if that person's husband hadn't died, or any of that stuff. I don't know if that's really going to affect how many voters that's going to affect. I don't know if it's like a lot. I don't know if they even understand that. They probably just see the R next to the name of the Trump endorsement.
I think
Maybe.
talking about messaging and strategy and stuff leads really well into the next topic because how will the message be sent out when millions of people are they already started getting evicted and stuff, and
Yeah.
Democrats are pretty much kind of setting us up to fail the midterms is how I feel currently. But I think it's also very nuanced, and a lot of that has to do with public not really understanding the process and all the steps that were already somewhat taken to avoid this that did not happen, or that did happen, but
So
Mm.
let's
successfully.
so let's actually go into the next topic. Before we do that, if you're here, you're new, you're enjoying this conversation, please do myself and you a favor and hit that follow button right now. Make sure notifications are on because we do this all the time, 6 days a week. Don't want you to miss out. So hit that follow button right this second if you haven't done so before. And just quickly, I wanted to thank people who have been gifting. Thank you, Leah, for that one sub earlier. Thank you, Essay, for 500 bits. For Kyo's rant, apparently that inspired that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gringo Guapo, for 1,000 bits as well. Really appreciate that. And our friend Counterpoints for gifting 5 high tier 1 gift subs to the channel. That's amazing. Yeah.
Long overdue. Long overdue.
Thank you for that investment here. Okay. So let's move on to the next topic. House Democrats failed to extend the eviction moratorium that has kept many renters in their homes during the pandemic. The White House dragged its feet on trying to extend the moratorium themselves after the Supreme Court blocked a possible route through the CDC. Then, just before the House was to go into a 7-week recess, the Biden administration asked Congress to act. Despite the emergency, Congress still left for vacation. Is this a sign of Democrats' actual commitment to low income and the unhoused? Do Republicans have a point when they say that Democrats only pretend to care about low-income citizens, but never actually deliver for them? If Democrats can't act when there is a clear national emergency, when can they be expected to do anything for the poor? All right. This is a thing that was making me a bit angry. It looks like the Democrats, and not just the House Democrats, but the White House itself, completely dropped the ball on this. And I'm not sure whether they've ever cared to begin with for this particular issue. So I really want to dig into this. Yeah, and do Republicans have a point when they say call bullshit on Democrats and their commitments? All right, so why don't we start with our good friend Kim?
I wish I fucking knew which one of the fucking Dems weren't fucking voting for this fucking bill. Fuck them, fucking Pelosi fucking covering for them. And I understand why they're probably in fucking moderate seats, but fuck, dude, fuck these cunts. I'm so sick of this shit. Just, if you're not going to do the moratorium, you have to do something. You can't just let people get fucking evicted from their houses. Last time I checked, like last year, it was 45% of people on average were up for eviction if these moratoriums don't go through. Like, I understand the political strategy behind covering for it, but fuck these particular House members who are covering for this shit. I can't believe it. Like, why? This is such an easy win.
Let's go, Kevin.
I mean, for real, honestly, just in terms of how the Democrats are handling this is really disastrous. It was handled disastrously even beforehand. And, just being in the midst of actually like representing tenants during the whole eviction crisis, like it was actually really shitty to still basically run into situations where even if the moratorium was in place, landlords were still able to evict tenants for other reasons, other reasons that were either legitimate or invented. So, I mean, it's not like the moratorium helped in 100% of the cases, but instead of a trickle of evictions, since the states were still not evicting anybody else, for the reasons of the moratorium, there's going to be a huge flood of them now. And instead of acting and instead of getting those very easy political points, the Democrats are doing nothing. I will say, though, I really don't care what the Republicans say on this issue. And that's just because of the fact that while it is accurate for them to say that the Democrats really don't care about the unhoused populations, that doesn't change the fact that they don't either.
Okay. Kyo, if you could use that mute button. Next.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. Counterpoints, if you have a moment.
Yeah, actually, it's really funny that people said that because, like, I used to tell my wife this shit. I was like, fucking Democrat, like, back when I was still really bought into the political binary and thought that mattered and that hypocrisy mattered, and not that everybody was a fucking hypocrite. So I was like, hey, listen, like, Republicans might be fucking assholes, but at least they're predictably assholes, okay? At least they're like, hey, yeah, we're evil. Whereas Democrats, they'll pretend that they're your fucking friend, and then they'll just stab you in the back last second. And, like, I can't imagine how frustrating it has to be to like at least like my side is like, Yeah, we don't give a fuck about poor people. Yeah, we don't give a fuck about the homeless. Yeah, whatever. We just want lower taxes and we just want rich people to be rich. Like, at least they're like openly evil. Whereas like Democrats, like they're like, oh yeah, we care about everybody. We do this, we do that. And like, I can't imagine anything more fucking frustrating. But to talk about it from like a pragmatic political standpoint, what we're talking about is we are talking about a balance. I don't know. I think COVID vaccinations have been available for a prolonged period. I think that people should have had an opportunity by now. I think I've been vaccinated for probably about 2 months now, and I was in one of the lower age categories. People should have had an opportunity to get vaccinated by now. Probably get back into the workforce because let's face it, it's actually pretty good for workers right now to find jobs. And then, like, of course, you can't back pay a year's worth of rent. And I think landlords probably understand that, and landlords should also understand that basically, like, if they evict this person, then what's going to happen? There's a whole bunch of other people who are going to be evicted, who's going to be, taking up this new slot. So basically, I think this all comes down to like a negotiative standpoint, where if you have the ability to work, you need to be vaccinated by now. You need to be looking for a fucking job, and you need to start paying your bills again. I'm looking at that same situation. For me, I postponed some bills during COVID. I am no longer postponing those bills because I fucking can't anymore. I have to get back on the horse. So that's kind of where we have to balance economics, human well-being, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry to you lefties. I'm sorry that the Democrats are your team because they suck.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I personally am of the opinion that the eviction moratorium has gone on longer than it should have originally. I think that when we instituted the additional unemployment pay, I think that that was a pretty reasonable push for people to actually be able to keep up on their debts and keep up on their rents and things like that. I think if people were not doing that, hopefully they were saving that money, and then so they would be able to provide for themselves once this moratorium ended. If you look at the actual amount that we paid, we in the extra unemployment benefits, they paid everybody $15 an hour for 40-hour work weeks for $600 a week, and that was on top of whatever you would make for your normal unemployment pay. Obviously, I'm talking about people that were actually able to pay their rents within this ability. I think that there are people that weren't able to do that, and I think those people should be helped. But I think that the amount of people that are actually affected by this is actually being a little bit overblown. Most of the things that I was able to find when researching this was like just people just saying that they might be susceptible to eviction, not actually like evicted or anything like that. So we'll have to see what actually happens when the numbers come out. I've seen some stories that have said that there's like banks with like tons of people like lining up like eviction notices ready to go, and I've seen other stories that say like, yeah, we've seen like a slight uptick. So it'll be interesting what actually the numbers pan out to be. But I think that based on what I've seen with the unemployment benefits that we had, the additional benefits plus the normal benefits, I think that it's perfectly reasonable for people to be able to at least do something to either prepare themselves for when this happened, or be able to continue to pay their debts as they were going along. What I worry about is people that did not do that, and now are racking up this huge amount of debt, because what's going to end up happening now, and based on what I researched, was that people are still going to be on the hook for whatever debts and back rent that they're actually owed. So I don't know how that's going to be handled, what ramifications that's going to have, but I think that that's actually to be blamed on the people for having the eviction moratorium going on for as long as it did. So hopefully we won't see too big of a high uptick of anybody actually losing their housing or ability to be housed. But I'm hoping that most people were responsible and were able to prepare for this, and will be able to find new places to live. And hopefully, because the market will be open and available, because of, if people are being evicted, there's obviously going to be people wanting to have people to move into their apartments that are now available. So we'll see how that goes out. But I'm hoping that people were responsible, but we'll have to see how the numbers play out.
Shadows?
Yeah, so I did not know the eviction moratorium was going on this late. So because I mean, I did not know it was still active, but I do know
He doesn't know
that
what we're talking
people
about. Great,
actually
wonderful.
have been paying
Good topic.
their rent and mortgages, and it's actually not that much lower than it was pre-COVID-19 when you look at like 2019 numbers. Like in 2019 numbers, it's about 82% paid their mortgages on time. And if you look at 2021, it's 80% in May and 77% in June. So it looks like people are getting back on track to, paying their mortgages on time, and people are, like actually paying them. So I think Biggs is actually partly correct here in the sense that, people are paying their mortgages and things are getting back to normal. And, obviously the housing market isn't great because, there's only so many apartments because we have so many fucking NIMBYs came back. Oh, I just can't create the neighborhood. Ugh. I mean, when
I
the
know the
little people
fuck
get
he's
in
talking
power,
about.
you don't have to worry about that anymore. Trust me, when my people get in power. But we'll get rid of those.
My people get in power. Yes.
Yappers.
I love it.
Caring about characters of neighborhoods. But memes aside, I do think that the job market is pretty good, and there is an opportunity for people to get jobs now. So I don't think this should hurt too many people. If there are people who have unfortunately lost their job because of COVID, hopefully they were able to find one. They are able to find one, or have been since the summer started. And I don't think this will actually affect too many people, thankfully. And if I'm wrong about that, then that's kind of scary. But yeah, I generally don't think this will affect too many people.
Maddie.
Yeah, the negative impact of the moratorium expiring can't be overstated. This will have sweeping effects. More lives are going to be upended. Families are going to be thrown into disarray. And there are going to be more people living on the street because of this happening. This is something that we've been kind of kicking the can down the road. And the Biden administration simply just didn't act. They didn't do enough to prevent this. I think maybe they were
To be fair, their
hoping
hands
that
were
it just
tied.
wouldn't be as bad.
They literally couldn't
But
do
it's
anything.
here, and this is something that is directly
They were blocked by the
threatening
Supreme
millions of
Court,
people's
and Congress
lives.
didn't act. So therefore, they were pretty
the
much
White House tossing it back to
hogtied.
Congress right before Congress went on recess is a pretty transparent flailing
Yeah.
attempt to just direct the blame
True.
elsewhere, saying, "Oh, it's actually Congress needs to act." I think that's a pretty transparent move, and it makes me really disappointed because they've otherwise had so many great. The White House has actually done a lot of really great things for people coming out of the pandemic. So I was extremely disappointed to see them not take this as seriously. They could have made this a priority. They could have protected the millions of people at risk of losing their homes, just at risk of no longer having a roof over their head. And if we want to look for possible solutions, I think we should look to how other countries managed this situation during the pandemic, because this isn't a situation that is unique to the United States. There were plenty of other countries that dealt with the exact same economic struggle and with the goal of keeping people in their homes, of alleviating the stresses and financial struggles that came with something like COVID-19. For example, France paused both rent payments and mortgage payments while issuing monthly relief checks to their citizens at the height of the pandemic. That ensured that not only was capital still flowing back into the market so that their economy was kept running in the short term, because obviously we saw, if you own any stocks at all or just look at the stock market, there was a sharp drop. I was someone who was laid off during the recession or during the pandemic. So as long they ensured that capital was still flowing, and they prevented a potential social and economic catastrophe of millions losing their housing in a small period of time.
We did the exact
if you
same
want to take
thing.
the pure
We
cold
literally
just
did the same
economic
thing. We put
impact
a eviction
view of the
moratorium on.
situation, millions of people just being evicted all at once, that is real bad for our economy and is a significant threat. So perhaps we should be focused on prioritizing keeping people in their homes. And if it's a question of compensating landlords for back rent, I like what California's doing, where they are paying rent for a lot of people because a lot of people qualify. But I mean, it seems like their North Star, or at least what they're prioritizing, is keeping people in their homes. And I think that should be the priority. And we can focus on, okay, well, then how do we make that work from a financial standpoint to ensure that we're also not damaging industry, whatever. That's how I see this. And I look forward to this discussion. And also, oh my God, thank you, Demon Mama, for the raid. Holy shit.
Wow.
Nice. Okay.
Oh,
all right,
that's coggers as fuck.
Cool. Let's go to
Yeah.
My turn. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. So I hate the way this question's framed. It's placing blame too specifically on certain parties and people. So legislation only a few days ago was to be voted on. And was blocked by both Democrats and Republican members of the House after only being given 1 day notice to pass this legislation. So House members aren't really covering. It was just all around. Posturing wise, though, at the very least, and passing a 2-week stay until they reconvene would have been really beneficial for a lot of people. I think waiting to see how many are affected is an absolutely horrific approach. Landlords have already started the process of evictions. Many landlords already didn't renew leases during the pandemic, so they could avoid the evictions. Landlords are also losing protections from banks, so they're also falling behind. A big issue here is states have been slow to spend the $45.5 billion that was approved for rental assistance by Congress earlier this year. And the reason for so slow spending isn't black and white, but a lot of people that need this rental assistance doesn't have access to this information. So I think landlords also failed. They should have been giving tenants info. And yeah, like I said, I think everyone failed here. Maddie brought up California. I want to bring up Seattle. So Seattle City Council extended their moratorium until September. Someone talked about like the back rent. I don't know if people think that like when you get rental assistance with these programs, they just hand these people cash and they're out spending it. They like give it to the actual landlords and banks and stuff. So when these programs are implemented and the money is given out, we could avoid that. So yeah, there's yeah. But yeah, so that's why back rent is finally catching up because the states are being super slow. So what we can do is actually organize around our city council because they hold most of the power with eviction moratoriums, and most action can be successful on a smaller target group. I also wanted to highlight that Rep. Cori Bush slept outside the U.S. Capitol on Friday night to urge her Democratic colleagues to return to Washington and vote to expand the eviction moratorium. So I'm on board with her.
finally Malcolm.
So I think the ending of the moratorium is generally a bad thing. Everybody's kind of made good points as to why that's a bad thing. I think a couple of things to be really mindful of that are important, like coming up.
Such a
one
bad
big thing
thing
is
to
that this is
begin
going to like
with, everybody.
jam-pack
You
a lot
not
of courts and
understand
municipalities and shit
the
like that, where people are
ramifications
coming to
of the
courts
bullshit
with
we
like
have on
hundreds
now.
and hundreds and hundreds of evictions that they're trying to serve all at the same time. It's going to be a fucking nightmare. I think Connor brought up earlier, like the idea of Democrats kind of posturing to like, you know, appease the idea that they're for the homeless people and shit like that. I think that's true. I think that the Biden administration ran really heavily on the idea that they would like help out with COVID relief. And this is kind of like them letting everybody down essentially by not like still arming this pretty hard. Another thing that I think is important to look forward to is like the idea of the Delta variant, like kind of surging. We know that like homeless people transmit COVID like a lot because they're usually out and congregating with each other. That's going to be like a big fucking issue that probably is not going to be dealt with in any kind of meaningful capacity. As we saw with the last administration, we're not doing a great job with this one. And then the other thing that I wanted to say was like the idea that these back paid rents are just going to be something that's going to be easy breezy, beautiful cover girl for people when they get their job, because the job market is surging, this, that, and the other thing. It's basically like the just get a better job 5 head argument that I think is really fucking stupid. So there needs to be like more financial support for people that are going back into the workforce, because what's going to end up happening is people are going to have their jobs and they're going to get fucked because they're going to be back dated however long with rent, and then they're going to have a shit ton of debt, and then it's just going to be an endless cycle of people owing a shit ton of money to people and they can't pay it off. So I think that it's pretty stupid, and we should do more to try and prevent people from being evicted. And that's all.
All right. Open to the panel, but Biggs, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so I don't understand why we think that the extending the moratorium is a good idea. Like, it's literally just, it's the exact definition of kicking the can down the road. You understand these people are still going to be responsible for any debts they incur, and it's literally just causing more problems on the overall economic issue if we keep pushing it further and further and people getting more and more in debt. I think that if, and again, I don't know if it's specifically for like higher level income areas where the additional unemployment and their actual unemployment can't match what their rent is. But I think those people maybe have some type of relief that they should be provided just because of like whatever their circumstances are. But I think for the most part, like we literally had people paid $15 an hour at the base level if they had unemployment. That was not including what they actually made for their actual unemployment. So that's where I have an issue. But I think that eventually we're going to have to deal with this problem. And the fact that most of the people on this panel are saying we need to kick the can down the road, I think is a mistake because it's actually compounding the actual problem. And we're going to eventually have to face it. So we might as well face it now when it's less detrimental than later on when it's going to be even more detrimental.
It's
Okay,
not
can I
kicking the
jump
can
in
down
here?
well, hold on. It's not kicking down the can down the road. The issue is that states have the
Oh no, my Discord crashed. Oh, I lost my Discord. Oh no. Oh no. I lost my Discord. Oh no.
Unemployment benefits that were being provided to the tenants. The fact of the matter is they have other bills to pay on top of what they also have to pay for rent, and they also have to feed their families. But I'm not going to jump into that so much as I'm going to jump into the failure of the state programs that we're at, because in terms of rental assistance programs, I'm going to use my state as an example, Virginia. So there was the Virginia Rent and Mortgage Relief Program. After a while,
I totally
it
lost
was
my
changed to a
Discord. That
different
sucked.
name. But the idea was that
Bummer.
landlords and tenants should have applied to different positions so that they can or not different positions, but basically apply to the program so that they can pay their bills and do what they're supposed to do. Problem is, though, that
Damn,
one, the states
so
did
bummed I
not
lost
build
my
up their
Discord there.
infrastructures for these programs where they could have actually gotten as much relief money out as possible, and the states also made it super stupid complicated to actually apply for that assistance. And then second, with a lot of these programs, what many of the states fell into was the fact that they basically they basically made so many exceptions where, even if landlords and tenants applied for rent relief, they actually didn't have an opportunity to get it because they may have actually fallen into one of the exceptions that the states laid out where they couldn't get rent. Example, again, in Virginia, the VRMRP did not apply to landlords who had already evicted their tenants, even though there is a likelihood that once the tenants are gone, they're not going to get their money, and now they're not going to get their money through the relief program. And then finally, people don't know how to take advantage of these programs because when they hear eviction moratorium, they're not told, oh, by the way, you need to sign this CDC form, you need to apply for these rent relief programs, you need to still show up to court when you get eviction, when you get an unlawful detainer filed against you.
Don't
But
say the
instead,
state, say your state, unless you apply
they
or
just
look
think,
in the
oh, well,
application. Yes,
eviction
I agree.
moratorium, I'm not being evicted because I can't get evicted. And then if they don't show up in court, then the judge is going to be like, okay, default judgment to the landlord. You get to you get to evict your tenant because they didn't come. So the fact of the matter is that there is not enough. I just don't think that the argument that rent continues to accrue, so why not just lift yourself up by the bootstraps and pay it is not a convincing argument, because there are just so many opportunities that are not taken advantage of when you go into these programs. And with that, I will stop monologuing like an attorney.
Can I defend Biggs a little bit?
Okay.
So
defend him quick, and then we're gonna go to Kill, Malcolm, and Shadows.
okay, yeah. So here's the thing: is like I think you are right, but I also think that like we're all negotiating a new economic reality. Some mortgage companies have been paid for the better part of a year. A lot of landlords haven't been paid for the better part of a year. They might have applied for these relief programs on their end, so they weren't getting like foreclosed on or losing their properties as a result, and they're not going to get this money back. I understand that like $15 an hour, 40 hours a week for most people, that might have helped a lot, but just speaking for me and my family, my wife lost her full-time employment, and she made while we needed unemployment in order to make ends meet, and she made significantly less on unemployment than she didn't. So we also have a lot of friends
Yeah, I
who are
think so.
restaurant
I just
retail,
think it's
and
this whole thing is ridiculous. Like he's doing the whole lawyer thing. Like, yeah, I understand that, but
so literally they go
it's pretty
from
much garbage overall. I would say,
making like $50K a year together or $60K a year to making zero overnight.
the fact of the matter is
and then
that
they
we
were able to
still
go
will
back
have
to work on a partial basis,
deal with
and
this
because they were retail
problem
restaurant, they lost 30%
at
of
some
their
point.
income.
So why
They're not,
make it worse?
They're not going to be able to
grow
catch up.
the issue.
So the question is, how do we kind of like sever this connection at this time? And this is kind of my thing is like, so you guys are talking about extending the moratorium. At what point does it end? At what point do we expect people to get vaccinated and go back to work? And what are the mitigating factors for that? Because as far as I understand, breakthrough cases aren't fatal, so or significantly aren't fatal. So what's the next step is my question.
Let's go to Kill.
Kill,
Malcolm, Shadows, and then Biggs.
Okay, cool. So I was going to talk about the rent payments, but it seems like every other person here has done a very good job of going over it. I think it was a significant problem with the way it's designed, and I think the family payments have highlighted something about the way that the US can do things, and that we don't need to do all this bureaucratic bullshit. Write fucking forms, fill the forms in, hand the forms in, get a check through, do the means testing, hands them back, get the forms back, do another set of forms, get those in, go back around, chase your fucking tail, fucking way of doing like money out. All right, these need to go out directly to the landlords. All right, fuck this application. Like, I am sure as shit that they can work with the banks and go straight through to the people who are behind on their rent, right? I don't think it's that big of a deal. But that's the problem, is that like even people I talk to like on a regular basis about politics and about tangential topics don't even know that this thing existed, because it was passed at the tail end of like a Trump organization in an even bigger bill that had so many other things coming out. These people just don't know that these programs exist or how to take advantage of them. Like the average Joe just doesn't fucking know these things. Not to like put down, but these people don't even follow politics.
I will say I like Keo.
So
He does. I know he's an
in part, it was
Aussie,
a way of getting it
but
behind. The
he's
reason
still-
why we
he
need
has
to
some
kick the
good
can down
takes,
the road
okay?
and to get these things done.
I like
is
him as a
because
lefty. I
we
think
look
he's a
at what
reasonable
happened
person,
in
but I think that
2007
you
and
need to.
2008 and everything that followed, right?
He does take a good
We
take
can
on like an
see
outside
that we
perspective
can
with
look
the
at
United States
income
from other
inequality
countries.
through a
So
metric called Gini.
I'm okay with that.
And the Gini coefficient just fucking spiked, right? The US already has one of the highest Gini coefficients in the world, and it went up after 2007. It's going to go up here. It's not going to be like the poor fucking land owning like sit-at-home tenants who work so fucking not tenants, the sit-at-home fucking landlords who work so fucking hard responding to like a request for a painted wall like fucking once every 3 weeks. It's going to be the people who are behind on their fucking rent by months and months and months because of circumstances outside of their control.
Why are they behind
because of a
on months and
government
months
who
and
didn't
months and
support
months?
them enough
It's
when
because
it
they're
came to
fucked.
it came to
I know, it's because
Corona,
they're
right?
fucked.
Biden got handed a fucking time bomb, and I don't know how he's supposed to handle it at this point because it's too big to do in one chunk, right? Almost every other country in the world did consistent payments to everyone to
Biden
stay the fuck at home,
apologism.
stay out of lockdown, right?
Typical Biden
This is just going to be a
apologistics.
ball and chain around the weight of the
Apologistic
poorest
Biden.
people in
He's
the
not even an
country,
American.
and
He
that's
wants to
only
apologize for
another
Biden.
further
It's
time
fine.
bomb that's going to be kicked down the road. Income inequality is the problem of our generation alongside climate change, and we need to fucking solve it. And
Neither
the
of those
government
things
just
are going to
isn't
get
taking
solved
it seriously
based on
enough right
government,
now.
especially not the U.S. government.
Malcolm Shadows, Biggs, Maddie.
So I think a lot of this is like focusing on how the moratorium is just kicking the can down the road. That phrase has been used a ton. So like the question is like, what is the alternative solution other than extending the moratorium? And I'm curious because it's like 7v Biggs right now essentially, but I'm curious about like what his answer is for like what the solution is. But like I know that Connor and Biggs both are like, well, what is the solution? What is the solution? Like a really easy 3 is like 1, we can end the moratorium when the pandemic is over. 2, we can end end the moratorium when vaccinations like reach herd immunity and it's safe for everybody to like go and like function in society, because I know people keep bringing up vaccines, but we aren't even close to like where herd immunity needs to be vaccination wise. And then 3, also like since the job market is surging and people can just go and get jobs because it's the best time in the world to go get a job, landlords could just go and get a full-time job and pay their own fucking mortgages. And those are like 3 off the top of my head, like really easy solutions that don't cause people to be like homeless without cause, right?
That's hilarious.
Or without need, I should say. Excuse me.
Sorry, my I don't know what happened. my browser just freaked out, so I don't know what to tell you. Okay, but I heard everything. I heard everything you said on the Discord. Okay, and it says I'm okay. Whatever. It's weird. All right, let's continue.
That face was priceless. That face that it stopped on Prime was amazing.
Oh.
It was good.
It was really good.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Hopefully, audience can see everything.
I hope we get clips of that.
Oh boy, I hope not. All right, let's move on. Let's go to Shadows, Biggs, Maddie.
I actually forgot what my initial point was because it's been too long. So go
Damn it,
Biggs.
Shadows, get it together.
And we also
Write it down, Shadows. Write it down.
You forgot how to use
I
Notepad.
should've.
Okay. All right, let's go to Biggs then.
All right, so first of all, I want to address some points that were made against me by specific panel members here. I want to start with Kevin. I do agree with you that there's a lot of issues when it comes to things in the way of people being able to apply for these types of aid and not knowing how to do that. But I also want to stress that it's ignorance is not a good argument against being able to find out how to do these things. I know a lot of people have maybe less access than most, but I think that people can easily find out these answers through either internet. Most people have phones. We've had a lot of things that are online that are available. Like basically, a lot of the online discourse is pretty left-leaning in general. So there's a lot more that we can find for people to find these programs and be able to actually find things and resources to be able to achieve these programs and find them and be able to actually get the money that they need and apply for these programs and things like that. So that was my first point. And then to Keo, I think that it's really not that complicated. Like when we were making the point that the process of getting these programs, I don't really think it's nearly as complicated as you're making it out to be. Obviously, there is some background information you need to provide. Obviously, like your maybe record of employment or something like housing situations and income and things like that, but I don't think it's nearly as complicating as you're making it out to be. I had to take a mandatory 2 weeks of unpaid work for my job when I that was like our COVID budgeting plan, and it was pretty easy for me. I was able to go onto the website for my state, apply for the unemployment, tell them like, hey, I'm being furloughed for 2 weeks, and basically they asked a few questions, and it was pretty simple online
To be
formatting.
clear, I wasn't talking about the unemployment. I was talking specifically about the application for rent back pay.
Right. So what I'm
But
saying is
unemployment's just as bad. This the means testing bullshit has to stop. Do you think people who like are applying for unemployment, people already outside of work, or people who are working so much that they need this money because they can't, they're already falling behind the desk because they aren't paid enough because they had to take time out from lockdown.
So you understand that people were literally getting paid $15 an hour on top of what they were paid from their actual jobs? You know
that was for a
is
very
correct.
short period of time.
That's still happening now. That's literally still going on now.
Right now. No, it's not.
No, a lot of those programs ran out.
Okay, so
Super
you were
Doll's
able to
been
get
dead for, like, over a
$600
year
additional
now.
on your unemployment, right?
For a very short period of time, yes.
Okay, and now that's $15 an hour for that time, right? So like I said from the beginning, was that I think if people are not able to live within those means, then I think they should receive some additional help, right? But what I'm saying is that it's not nearly as complicated as a process as you're making out to be, right?
The 2 months of Super Doll was not nearly enough to cover for the now year and a half of pandemic.
I really don't think that's the case. But anyways, and then the last one I want to point out for Malcolm
can you stretch
was
out 2 months worth of full-time pay over a year and a half? If you can, I would love to fucking hire you.
I was about to say, a lot of the tenants that I represented couldn't make that stretch.
Okay, but hold on. We know. Hold on. God damn it. Do I have to play the enlightened centrist here? Okay. Holy shit. So the fucking, I think we could admit that the fucking benefits weren't sufficient for people who were working fucking full time to make ends meet in the fullest, and they probably got behind on a whole bunch of shit, while simultaneously not pretending that fucking like $7,000 was all people got. Okay, people got state level unemployment, they got the unemployment assistance, they got it for the better part of a year. So yeah, they're probably still behind on all of their shit. The reason why I'm not taking Biggs's full side here is because like. Basically, like, I do think that like I don't think it was enough, and I know plenty of people who were making decent money pre-pandemic and couldn't make that money even with benefits, and basically when they went back to work, they were kicked off of benefits, and then they were making 30% less. So they were, they were already day late dollars short before the pandemic, and after the pandemic, they're day late $300 short. So I think we can acknowledge that is the situation for a lot of people, while also acknowledging that, like, hey, like, the really what's going on is how do we manage going forward? I think Yosan basically brought up the exact point that people either need to get reimbursed from the government or they just need to call it a fucking loss, and we need to look at the future. The reason why I keep being future oriented whenever I'm speaking is because, as a bookcase, is because basically, like, when we're looking at this, it's like, is Delta serious enough to shut down the economy again? And then are we going to base economic reopening on people getting vaccinated to the point of herd immunity? Because at that point, basically, in order to do that, since we have a whole bunch of anti-vaxxers, largely on the right, is you have to start the fucking government literally, like, I don't know, pointing guns at people in order to get them to fucking do it. They're not going to do it. They're going to start a fucking civil war. So what the fuck are we talking about? And when does it start?
Yeah, so we had
respond to that, and then we'll go to Maddie.
What'd you say? Sorry, I missed that, Prime.
Biggs, you respond to that and go to Matt.
Yeah. So we did have the $600, and now we have the $300 that just ended about a week ago, right? So if you add that to what people would make from their normal unemployment, they're basically making, during the $600 time, they were making more than what they would make normally, for the most part, on average. And now they're making about what they would make. Pardon me?
Median wage is nearly $25 an hour.
From what?
The median national wage is only $25 an hour.
Right. But we're talking about what
you said they're getting paid $15 an hour, right?
No. Yeah, that's on that.
That's
the
less than half the median wage.
Right. The $15 an hour is what they would make based on no additional unemployment from what they actually make. Unemployment's based on a percentage of what you make, and then on the additional was the 600, and then now the 300, right? So, but basically what I'm saying is
600 ran for a couple of months, or 300 ran for a couple of months.
Right. No, it's more than a couple months. But anyways, what I'm saying is,
it was exactly
what I'm saying, no, it was more than a couple months, because a couple would be 2, more than 2 months. But anyways, what I was saying was that if people need to be prepared for these situations, right? And what I'm saying is that if people are taking that money and paying their rent, which is what they should be doing with that money, hopefully they will not be in the situation where they need to be evicted. But if they're not paying that money and they're just saying, hey, I'm not going to pay my rent because the eviction, which I don't think is the case for the most part, but if they are, hopefully they're taking that money and they'll use that to buy or rent a future place, right? But what I think needs to happen is the problem what we're having is that this cascading effect of not having the people have the money and then not the rent paid, then not the landlords getting the money, then not the banks getting money. This is a whole cascading effect on the economy all the way down the line. So what I want to say to you is, how can we actually make this be a situation where we can improve the situation and not just kick the can down the road? What do we actually solve by kicking the can down the road to the future? Because eventually people are going to have to either pay money or there's going to be a huge default on all this debt, right? And that's going to have huge ramifications in the economy in the future. So if it's better to pull the Band-Aid off now or push the can down the road when we're going to actually have a larger detriment to society overall? That's my question.
So let's go to Maddie, and then if Keel wants to respond after that.
So I was on unemployment for a year. I just want to say this before I get to my other point. I was on unemployment for a year almost a year, when I lost my job during the pandemic. So I also, not only did I qualify for the max amount because I had been working for a large tech company, so I had a large salary prior to that. I qualified for the max amount, and I was given, the extra funds issued by the federal government. Even with that, if I had not been living with my fiance, I couldn't have paid rent with that. I couldn't have also paid for groceries, paid for utilities, made car payments. Even though I was I couldn't have paid for gas if I was trying to go to interviews or anything else. It was necessary. It helped us keep stability and put food on the table for most families. That's exactly what it does, but it's barely enough to live and survive. So I just want to dispel this notion that people could have been using these unemployment checks to save and then pay their back rent, whatever. No one's living large on unemployment checks, even with the additional money that came initially from the federal government. And then at least in California, we were able to get more from our state government as well. It's barely enough to survive, but it at least kept it so that people weren't starving and they weren't they were able to continue paying for their prescription medications. So let's dispel that notion. I also think it's important to differentiate between small-time landlords and large corporations who are major landowners, because the majority of rental properties in our country are owned and leased by large corporations. And one question on the side that I would love to know, and I might research this later. I just don't have time, and my computer is a mess and doesn't have the bandwidth to research and do video at the same time. Apparently.
The clip came through, but let me see
I want
here.
to know how many of these real estate corporations received relief funding during the pandemic.
Something went wrong.
I want to know how many of them received funding from the federal government during the pandemic, or whether they applied for that program where they were given relief funds, whether or not they were given certain benefits because if they kept people on their payroll. I know there were a number of programs, so I'm curious to see when they're saying, oh, but these landlords are hurting. I want to know how much were they hurting? And I think the best possible solution would be simply forgiving the unpaid debt. That's then being able to end the eviction moratorium, but also making relief funds available to small-time landlords and landlords that could potentially be hurt by not getting any sort of payments. I don't know that I would extend that same relief proposal to large corporations. Maybe that's something that can be discussed, but I think the overall cost to our society as in general, and also to our economy at large, I think that it would hurt our economy much more to just simply kick people out of their homes and allow that to happen. I think that would hurt us more than forgiving their debt and having companies take the L on that. I think that a lot of, or most economists, especially economists who specialize in macroeconomic theory, would agree. And then separately, I think we need to eliminate the bureaucratic red tape for people to get relief from the government. I think Kyo-san is like 100% correct in this. It is so difficult for people to simply apply for relief that they are entitled to and desperately need. It's just this unnecessary barrier for people who are working class, who are low income, to get the kind of help they need. There are so many different barriers that prevent them from doing so. So we need to find ways to streamline that process so that people aren't dissuaded from even seeking out help because they have to overcome just miles and miles of bureaucratic red tape.
Oh, can I back this up real quick? Actually, if you can research this shit for Florida, during the beginning of the pandemic, they left their unemployment system intentionally broken for months.
Mhm.
That way, and then also on the back end, so they ended the benefits early. And then also what they did is they started sending out notices to people incorrectly saying, oh, hey, there was a miscalculation with your payments. You actually owe us money. And then they kicked them off of the dole. So like that's kind of the thing. Like, you know, for me, again, like I keep saying it over and over again. My goal is to try to get everybody vaccinated and back to normal as quickly as possible. But we can't pretend that like it was as simple as like, oh, hey, you're unemployed. Well, that sucks. You're technically legally entitled to this this benefit. You paid into the system for the past decade. So we're gonna go ahead and help you out while you're screwed. No, it was like pulling fucking teeth. It was like going through the fucking DMV while getting a root canal. And then they were acting like they were doing you a fucking favor, despite you basically working your dick off for the past decade and a half. So you know, again, like I'm more with Biggs, like, hey, how do we make sure that people get where they need to go as quickly as possible? How do we actually like do the balance for the economy? How do we make sure that we move forward? But I also don't want to pretend that like, you know, the state governments were like holding our hands all steps of the way and they're like, hey buddy, together we're gonna get through this. That didn't fucking happen.
The reality is that like most people can't pay, like most people cannot pay like any sort of back rent. And even if they have a job, like because they took a hit or their hours were reduced, or for those who like are recovering from getting sick and like can't work to the same capacity they used to, like people are like, it's not like they're living large and like making all these big like fancy luxury purchases with their unemployment
I don't
check
think anybody's
instead of paying
thinking
rent.
that.
So it's like, why should we kick them out of their homes?
Well, not to mention for families, you know, they also have children that they need to take care of. You know, so in terms of all that, like, for example, when the kids had to learn from home, you know, the parents had to stay there, and not every family is going to be blessed enough to, you know, be able to work from home. So that ultimately means that you rob one of the parents of, you know, the ability to earn an income, and then you have a situation
Amanda's
where,
back.
you know,
Yay, Amanda smash.
they're just kind of screwed either way. And
Disproportionately affecting women, by the way.
yeah,
It was-
exactly. You know, and it's just one of those things where, like, I mean, honestly, I think that the thing that would have fixed this problem in the first place would have been if our government wasn't broken and we could have actually taken the approach that would have helped landlords and tenants and not had us rely on this kind of broken system in the first place.
Barry.
But unfortunately, we're arguing in the worst timeline, so we're kind of working with what we've got. And what we've got is the same kind of reality, which allowed Connor Points to go into the DMV for a root canal, and that's why he's a spooky bookshelf now.
So let's go to...
That is how I died.
Indeed. Let's go to Kyo. So he's
sir.
learning. He is learning about this mute button. It's a
I see. Because I was typing and reading before. Okay, so I apologize for using imprecise language, Biggs. I said a couple of months. The Super Doll was all of 4 months.
Yep.
And then the $300 payments have been going since September and will go through to next September, right? And this is on top of unemployment benefits, right? One of the massive problems as a result of COVID is underemployment, that people have had their shifts cut and can't actually put in for these benefits. The other part of this is this has been going on for so long now that unemployment benefits in America, because your country fucking sucks and doesn't have a good employment system, has an expiry date. I know that some states decided to cut that expiry date for COVID, which is sick and pog, but like a lot didn't, right? There's no need to have expiry on unemployment, by the way. That's a really fucking dumb policy. I hate these more fucking Republicans who put these things in place because they're worried about dole bludgers. Stupid policy. But as an aside, right? This is more me like hating like American welfare because it's really, really bad. Like, fuck, man. Side note of a side note. Fuck these morons in America. Like, these migrants want to come here and bludge off our benefits. Like, dog, your benefits suck. Your benefits really fucking suck. Like, your country cannot do benefits for fucking shit. Your unemployment benefits suck. Your healthcare sucks. Your entire government system sucks. Okay, you all need to pull your fucking heads out of your ass. No one's coming to your country for your benefits. Okay, like I don't understand saying that if you're Australian, but like in America, your benefits just suck. Okay,
I agree. 100%. We need benefits that actually promote people to get new jobs, better jobs, and actually improve themselves. That's what we need to put the money into, not just giving money to people for nothing. That's what I feel like is the biggest problem. We need to put that money to actual like tangible improvement of people's lives. Not just we've seen like I don't want to kind of go off track here, but we've seen the whole like welfare state issue throw money down the drain. We haven't actually improved people's lives. I want to advocate for people actually being able to improve their lives through programs that we can educate and actually get people to be productive in society and actually become a net benefit and not just a welfare draw. That's it.
Money is thrown down the drain through like administration cost and corruption. It's definitely not thrown at people.
But that's true too. Yeah.
So g'day Migsy in chat. My country fucking rules. We paid out $1,000 a week to everyone who was underemployed or unemployed during the fucking coronavirus pandemic. We actually paid for our citizens to make sure they didn't fall into dilapidation, right? To make sure they didn't have to worry about this rent moratorium. My country sucks. Y'all just stay fucking mad, okay? Fucking hellhole country.
Didn't you guys handle the pandemic like way better?
Yep, we handled it significantly better.
That's what I pointed out. I'm like, that should have fucking happened. And it's economically sound. You look at the countries that
Thanks, Buckeye, for hanging out. I appreciate it. Thanks for the sub, man. You're amazing.
Was so much more expedited than ours because turns out when you make it so that people are able to afford groceries, pay rent, like when you do a cash injection at the grassroots level, that a larger percentage of that capital then flows back into the market. But if you do the fucking milquetoast bullshit we did where we're like, oh, but what if we just like make it so banks can make better loans and like people have to fill out 10,000 forms?
Hold on. Number one, we know Australia is not real. Number two, if it is real, it's on the bottom side of the upside down fucking planet. You have to fucking walk around on it with a gravity harness, and they have spiders the size of fucking cars. So like I don't even know why we're entertaining any of this shit. When one, it's probably not real, or two, it's a fucking hellscape if it is real.
I think their president or their prime minister or whatever crazy thing they have over there, I'm pretty sure it's a kangaroo. And I don't know that I trust their judgment. To be fair, a kangaroo
would spend more time at work than the current one that we've got. Okay, every time we have any kind of crisis, he decides it's a great fucking time to go for a holiday to Hawaii. But I wanted to like piggyback off that point that Maddie made, in that like direct cash is like one of the best things we can do. There's an economic multiplier effect because what happens is that poor person goes and buys a new TV, right? And that business that they're at the TV at now have that money they've taken, the profit they've taken from the TV, plus the person they bought the TV from, who now go and spend that somewhere else. And now by the time you've done the welfare loop, you've got, I think it's a 1.8 economic multiplier on like direct cash welfare. Direct cash is actually one of the best things you can do. Where you lose a lot of money is in bureaucracy. Part of the reason why the welfare state has problems is because you're paying for a fuck ton of bureaucracy, a fuck ton of means testing from boogeymanning fucking Republicans talking about dole bludgers that don't fucking exist.
Yeah, means testing, truly.
Listen, we means test so fucking Jeff Bezos can fly to space in a dick, okay? So, like, I mean, at least we got our shit.
We should charge him a re-entry fee.
Just slightly against the whole thing about Australia and handling COVID. I mean, just understand that they are on an island, right? They have more control of the borders. And They have a much smaller population.
We have incredible. We have population density on par with yours. We have a very large area, but almost no one uses it. Almost no one uses it. Okay.
Hold on, no. Oh, okay.
We
Everyone
only have
lives on the
2
fucking
physical
East Coast.
borders.
Yeah, I know, but okay, you're right.
Like it makes you can make a fair point about us being on an island, but people travel by planes. This isn't the 1800s, Prime. Okay.
Everything's an island,
Have
technically.
you considered that
But did you guys like
literally
super
everything on
lock
their island
down
is
like
trying
all
to
the
murder
plane travel
everyone?
too?
Yeah, we locked down. Where we fucking locked down all the plane travel. Hell yeah, dude.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. So like,
Y'all
obviously,
didn't.
like, yeah,
Y'all didn't.
well, we tried to, but then they said it was
took us a
xenophobic.
minute.
Okay.
Well,
Sorry.
it took us a minute.
Honestly, I just think that
Kevin.
I was just gonna say, honestly, I definitely agree with Kyo-san and how Australia approached it and other countries around the world approached it. You know, this whole welfare queen, lift yourself up by the bootstraps mentality is horseshit, and we should have paid the people to stay home so that the pandemic could have been largely prevented. Because let's not forget, we're still in the pandemic and we're probably heading to another shutdown in America. So do we really want to keep, I mean, honestly, do we want to make things worse? Do we want to keep, pretending that people could just apply for government programs and that's going to save them? No. Because by not doing anything and by the Democrats not extending this moratorium, we are kicking the can down the road to another shutdown.
The problem is you literally can't close down everything. There has to be some type of infrastructure in place to like get people fed, get resources to people that need resources, gas, things like that. Like there still needs to be some type of infrastructure in place, and I just don't think you can actually shut down everything, right? I think what we tried to do, huh?
Are you talking about lockdown?
No, what I'm saying is like for like the United States specifically, right? So we tried to lock down, we tried to do the 2 weeks to stop the spread thing, right? Most places actually at the beginning of the pandemic, most places were absolutely behind that whole deal, right? At least from my understanding. From what I saw, I live in the Midwest, and that was one of the places that I ended up pushing back against that later on. But like in the beginning, we were all pretty much for like, hey, let's stop this in its tracks. Let's try to like end this while we can. But what happened was we found out that we couldn't shut down everything. We still had people going to grocery stores. We still had people needing to get things like that.
So one thing I would note is that the data I've seen on this, and if you want me to, I can pull it up, but it'll take me some time, is the data I've seen on this is that citizen participation in lockdowns in the US was significantly lower than every other country that did lockdowns. You all don't want to stay the fuck inside. People still go out for groceries during lockdown. We did as well. But like, and we are right now, we're in a heavy lockdown in Australia right now in Queensland, right? But the citizen participation in lockdowns in the US was significantly lower than every other country because Republicans can't keep their fucking tidy whities on and sit still for 2 seconds without shitting their pants.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey.
I wanted to say this. Like,
Freedom.
if we had literally, at the beginning of the pandemic, actually fully closed down for 2 goddamn weeks, that would have stopped the spread. That would have allowed us to fucking isolate if we had implemented actual testing and tracing. No. Yep.
Worked in other
that would
countries.
have happened. Then we actually, and did what
That's
other
a
fucking countries did.
sentient
But no,
butcher.
instead people were like, I'm not wearing a mask. That infringes on my freedoms. It's like, no, it infringes on your ability to protect yourself from an airborne virus. Yeah. It's literally what every fucking public health official has like been screaming. And that's the thing. But people are like, oh no, we can't close down for 2 weeks. I can't like that. You can't ask people to stop
I don't
their
think
life
that
for
was
2
the
weeks.
case.
We could have, because instead what we've had are this like bullshit half closings for over a year now, and I wish we would have just fucking actually gone full closure for 2-3 weeks and then not had to deal with this bullshit in the meantime.
No.
That would have been
No.
lovely. Yeah.
Okay.
No.
No.
Yeah.
Can I explain my no?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. First off, oh fuck. Okay. So number one, people who did aggressive fucking closures still got fucked up by this disease. At the end of the day, it's a disease. Number fucking two, I think we're the number one tourist destination for like 10 different fucking states, and on top of that, we're like the number one fucking economy in the world. Everybody comes here. If we shut down for fucking 2 weeks, then literally somebody who was exposed to the disease in a different fucking country would have, like there's no fucking way that you can look at like I don't know, like virology fucking spread statistics and think that 2 to 3 weeks would have actually fucking done this. All that would have happened is we would have postponed it 2 to fucking 3 weeks, and then we would have had the exact same problems. Now that being said, I do want to concede the fact that like our fucking half-ass bullshit basically like has prolonged it and also killed way more fucking people and all that kind of shit. But at the same time, like the 2 weeks to stop the spread should have been a fucking meme that should have died like a year and a half ago. Whoever said it should be like, I don't know, like shoulder tortured. And whoever fucking propagates it, like I don't know, Maddie, I like you a lot, but like we'll come up with some creative fucking torture that like you're into or
One
You
something.
and the
thing,
gulag,
Connor, I will
man.
say
Wanted
the
to,
US
like,
is
wait.
the US has been number one in one thing. The US is number one. US is absolutely number one. The number one in two things: prison incarcerations and COVID fucking deaths. Okay,
Yeah,
if you
you're
don't think
Hey,
that like
we
it
did
didn't work in the other
it.
country,
Also, like,
welcome.
here's
Hey,
the way you do this. It's easy to do this, and this is why, by the way, like people who actually like implement and study public health policy were screaming that we should have done this because it actually would have fucking worked. And here's why. So the good thing that we could have done is not only fully closed down, but what other countries do when they were determining who is allowed into their country or not. So you're talking about the tourism
closed
factor,
borders,
which I think is
talking about
important.
language.
No, but here's the thing, because we might as well have had it, and that's what a lot of Europe had during the pandemic. That's why Americans couldn't travel there, because they were like, no, your country has not gotten their shit together, so no, you will not be coming into our borders. If we had taken that sort of approach, then collectively that would put more pressure on countries who also, by the way, depend on U.S. investment and other things to have similarly strict policies. But there's a reason that like the United States like uniquely fucked up, and it's because we were so reluctant to do any sort of meaningful closures. And it's like, you don't just do a closure, you also have to pay people to stay home, because you can't just expect people to like incur all that risk when they need to put food on the table. They need to like pay for their own health care and pay for their kids' shit. Like if we had paid people to stay home, actually do a full closure, and then implement testing and tracing at a national level so that we could pinpoint where outbreaks happened, then yes, we would have had a better chance, and we maybe wouldn't find ourselves in the dumbass position we are in right now. But people can't seem to stomach direct cash payments, so, and I guess it's a free.
Can we just
Not to
admit, like,
mention,
hold
there's
on.
the lack of
Sorry.
I was just going to say, not to mention there's a lack of enforcement of lockdown of things that could have actually saved a lot of lives, and just enforcement in general of keeping this pandemic under control that our country has historically actually employed during the previous pandemic that we had gone through. So, just for a bit of context, as early as 1904, there was a Supreme Court case that was passed where, for example, for the public health and for the public good, people could be made to get vaccines. That is still on the books. That is still something that's around, and I am going to look up the name of that case afterwards. But during the influenza pandemic of 1918, what ended up happening is a lot of the same stuff that we are going through now, as in people didn't want to wear masks. People were being absolute goobers about not killing other people. And what ended up happening is that a lot of places implemented influenza courts to enforce these things because they needed to. Because under the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution, what we have is basically the state's ability to look
Completely
out
went
for
off the
the
rails for
health
sure.
and safety of their residents.
whole debate
so
went off
what
the rails
ends up happening
a while
there
ago.
is, a lot of the Republican states shit the bed, and, in addition to the federal lack of anything coordinating this whole pandemic. And so what happens is that the states had the power to actually get this stuff under control. And in the modern context, we had failed to do that, which is why this pandemic is still raging on today, and why we're on our way to another lockdown like our good friend Kyo-san.
Okay, my counterpoint tails in perfectly with your statement. So, can we just admit, like, just as a consensus, that, like, I don't know, it just seems like a lot of people really hate freedom. They really hate liberty. And I'm not saying that because, like, I'm saying that in and of itself, freedom and liberty are good. I'm just saying that freedom and liberty includes the freedom and liberty to be a fucking dumb fuck. And so while Kyo-san is right that we're like number one, I think you recently, I think Australia recently beat us in obesity. So congratulations on being the number one in
Hell
that
yeah!
category.
Just another thing we're
But-
better at than you.
but like number one in deaths, you know, it's because we're significantly freer to be dumb fucks in our country, because, you know, the government comes along and it says, hey, you can't do that, and we say 1776, motherfucker, and then like we just
Connor,
go do
I'm
whatever we
sorry.
want.
That's
You know what?
total
I'm gonna
horseshit.
reply here, and I'm gonna say that y'all aren't freer. Your freedom of
Yeah.
speech laws are actually worse
Yeah,
than a lot
we're
of
not
other
freer.
countries, including
Worse.
Australia. The one
Eat
thing
my
you are
ass.
worse, the one thing that is different
You
here
don't
is
exist
that
in a
your PISA
vacuum.
scores are significantly lower than almost every other country's. You're just an uneducated country. You've just got dumber people, okay, who can't sit the fuck inside, wear a fucking mask, and not cause a fucking global pandemic for everyone else. Because I tell you
Listen,
what,
not
some of the first cases in
Yeah.
Australia were fucking dumb fuck Americans who brought that fucking shit over here.
Okay, listen, not everybody has the privilege of being descended from prisoners who are used to being told when they can go outside, okay? So, like, you know.
Okay, so
All
let's
right.
go.
No, but
Let's
you don't
go
sit
on.
in
We
a
have the highest
vacuum.
prison
You don't even
population
sit in a
on the
vacuum.
planet
You're
right
free to
now.
be a
I don't
dumbass
think
as
that's a
long as
good
it doesn't
thing.
like threaten people's lives or their livelihoods. You can be a dumbass however you want, but the truth is you live as part of a community, as part of like a larger society. And when your dumbassery like leads and just saying, I don't want to wear a mask, freedom, then leads to 600,000 people dead because like of a fucking preventable like disease where you can just prevent it from being spread and like tracing it, whatever. But people were like, no, I can't. Yeah, 1776. The whatever. Flag.
Whatever.
It's like, no, then
Rock
yeah,
flag
you
in
can
the
fuck off.
ear.
We're not free. We're not
So-
free. Like I'm not free to get sick because I'd go fucking bankrupt.
So
Like,
let's
we're not
let's get
I was
let's go
about
to
to say,
hold on. Let's go to Shadows, who hasn't. You said you wanted to say something previously. If you can speak over the sound of Kyo typing, that'd be great. And then Biggs, if he hasn't, if he still wants to say something.
Wait, I didn't say I want to say something. What are you
That
talking about?
you were like no before, so I assumed you had
Oh.
something. But I guess it was a reflexive reaction to like a liberal talking. But okay.
No, I was basically just saying
I have that effect. I'm sorry.
Connor kind of already said it for me, but like the idea of like just hard lockdown for 2 weeks is like it's like a fucking meme. Like this would not have stopped it. That's just not the case. Especially towards the beginning. There's a reason why it's called the novel coronavirus. It's because we didn't know shit about it. We've been learning shit about it. There's a reason why in the beginning we told people to stop buying masks. Okay, because the medical professionals didn't have access to it because people were hoarding shit, and we had to tell people to stop doing that. And then we realized, oh wait, we do need a mask. This is how we stop it. This is like the thing. Like, no, a hard lockdown for 2 weeks would not have stopped anything. It would have just delayed what we went through by 2 weeks. So, yeah.
All right. Let's go to. Well, actually, I don't have it. Anyway. Go ahead, Big Son.
Yeah, so I kind of want to bring it back. I know we've been talking a lot about the pandemic and the pandemic response, stuff like that. And I know that ties into the whole eviction moratorium and all that stuff, because that's the whole reason why we had it. But what I still haven't had any actual confirmation on the panel is like, what do we actually accomplish by extending the moratorium? Like, I don't really see any avenue where we can actually.
Okay, chat. Here's the thing.
Preventing
are you-
evictions.
wait,
What
Are
else?
you talking to
Are you
us?
talking to us, Kevin?
Kevin?
Or are you talking to your own chat?
No, I fucked up again. Sorry.
Okay.
I love you, buddy. It's all
Wait, one
good.
note.
I'm
So,
talking
as far
to
as I
you.
understand, at least this happens in China. When people register for file their taxes and register for file incomes, they have to note where those incomes come from, right? And this would include landlords and tenants. Yes. Yes.
I'm
Is this
sorry,
correct?
Could you repeat
I
the
don't.
question?
You're talking
So,
about
when people- when people
Chinese
file-
accounting or like
I'm sorry.
taxes.
Look, when people file for their taxes, right? Generally, have to indicate where the income comes from, right? This would include landlords. Is that correct?
I believe so. I
Yeah?
don't see- yeah.
So you can just fucking do like a dual. Here's like an idea for like a stimulus bill. I'm not a politician, so I don't know how to pass or how to go. But you could both put one instance of we cancel the
you wanna do,
amount
like,
of
debt carry
for
forward?
rent moratorium, right? No, I'm not talking about carry forward debt. No. So
Okay.
what I'm talking about is like one. Say to the tenants, hey, you don't have to pay back what you missed out on, and then two, give a direct cash payment to the landlords. So you can You can average out the amount owed, right? Cancel the debt, and then give direct cash payments to the landlord so they can stop whinging about their fucking
So
money.
where does that money come from?
Government. They can.
Okay, so
I don't fucking care.
we're
Stimulus
kicking
is
it. We're,
fun.
so we're
Passing
kicking the
tax
can down the road
legislation is,
for
like,
some
the hardest
taxable
thing to
income later.
do.
All
Pardon?
right, go ahead, Ashley or Amanda. Sorry.
Passing tax legislation is very hard to do. But yeah, no. So the whole point of extending the moratorium is so states can catch up and pay these landlords or the banks, not the people, to back pay their rent to avoid eviction. So then people not only don't have a home, they have to find money to come up with a deposit and first month's rent, or even look for another program offered that'll probably eventually be offered after a whole bunch of people go homeless, right? They're going to end up having to use this $45.5 billion towards the housing. So why are we not going to address it?
Can I address that?
Wait, I do want to make a note. Sorry.
No, why would we not just address the issue now instead of have millions of people potentially be homeless? Like, it makes no sense.
Go ahead, Kyo-san.
So a quick note about like where would that money come from is the concern would be that money would be going into the economy, diluting the money supply, increasing inflation, whatever, if you printed it off, right? Realistically, what you could do is you could print it off and go straight back into the debt here, because if anyone doesn't know, in terms of like monetary policy and money creation, money is created from debt. It's direct. This is how we do it in the US. It's how like most countries do it, is that you all have like an interest rate, and that's a market influence on people choosing to take out debt or not. So usually there's too much money in the money supply. The Fed will raise the interest rate, slowing down people taking out debt, or if there's not enough money in the money supply, they want to increase money creation. In the case of something like the pandemic, they'll lower the interest rate and incentivize people to take out loans, right? Yeah. So you're creating a program where you print out money, give it to landowners to pay off their mortgages that were fallen behind because of people not paying their fucking rent. Then what happens there is you're creating money and then instantly redestroying that money basically by putting it back into the loan. So you could even call it a loan credit. You could do anything like that. I don't fucking care. But it doesn't seem like it'd have any influence on any kind of inflation. You'd be able to keep the landowners happy. You'd be able to keep the renters happy. And you wouldn't create a situation where you would have an entire generation have a massive weight of debt around their neck, just like what happened from 2007, which like we know in retrospect now, absolutely fucked the black community in particular.
Go ahead, Biggs.
So I'm glad you brought that point up, because when you actually have debt creating money, you're actually literally kicking the can further down the road, because that money eventually has to be paid off, and there has to be interest, so it actually compounds the actual effect on the money supply that we have, right? And that's the problem that we're having now. And what I want to address,
you're using
Amanda's
it to pay
point,
debt. It's a net moot,
right?
Because you're creating.
You're making money from nothing, therefore you're stripping the total value of all money.
No, like that's how money's created. And I'm literally a former economist.
Yes, I'm literally I'm an accountant. Okay, I know how this works, right? So
you don't know how macroeconomics works. You know how like
macroeconomics is different than accounting, but okay.
Right, but okay, you guys are completely wrong on this whole deal. Like it's fine.
So if you're creating debt, if you're creating money from debt and then paying off debt, is it a wash or no?
So you are literally creating money from zero value to pay off the debt. Therefore, you're actually diluting the whole money supply.
So where does that money come from?
It comes from nowhere.
The money comes from debt.
It comes from nowhere. Which actually, I'm glad you brought. No, I'm really glad you brought this point. What happens when you put the money back in?
Please let me make my point. What happens when you put the money back in?
Let me make this point. You literally brought up. No, wait. Please let me finish.
Please go ahead.
Please let me finish. You brought up the whole point of the Fed keeping the interest rates low, right? The interest rates actually.
They're not keeping the rates low, no.
Yes, they are. They literally artificially keeping the rates low right now. Yes, that's how they're creating. That's how they're putting the pressure
to raise interest rates.
No, that's how. No, you have no idea what you're talking about. You don't understand what's literally happening right now in the United States. Okay, they literally have our interest rates are artificially low to keep down the inflation.
Have to keep it low?
Do you not understand that at all? You are completely wrong.
Do you want me to link you to the Federal Reserve has an FAQ area that provides further information about their secondary market purchases of agency mortgage-backed securities? If you want to know why you're wrong.
Do you guys not understand? No, you guys. Okay. Do you not understand that the Fed controls interest rates, right? Because they want to keep the amount of inflation in check. because we want to
That's
keep
true,
rates.
yes.
Everyone would love
Yes,
to have
that's
that
literally
notion,
why we
right?
have the
That part's
Fed.
true.
That's
Holy
why they
shit!
actually
Let him get the
can-
Well, that
fucking
is not
point
what
Yeah.
I
Okay,
said.
whatever. If you
Okay,
guys want,
let
if you guys
him
want to
get
argue
the
about being
point out.
wrong,
Oh,
you guys can
that's-
look up this later. But you guys are fucking wrong here, 100%.
I'm a
And if you
literal
guys want to
graduate
argue that,
degree.
that's fine. But you guys are 100% wrong.
No,
Okay.
the first part that you
It's
mentioned
fine.
there
No,
is correct.
I'm not. No, you guys are
you're
wrong.
right.
It's fine.
You're
Published
right.
macroeconomist.
No, here's the
Okay,
thing.
Okay, that's fine.
You're
But-
right.
Okay.
I'm saying you're right. You're right about the Fed uses the interest rate to control inflation. That is what a major part of the Fed's job. It's not their only job, but it's a major part of the Fed's job.
Right,
You're
that is,
100% correct, right?
Sure.
The second, the operative part of that sentence before that was so incredibly wrong was
Mhm.
artificially keeping interest rates low, because that's not the case
Yes.
at all. And they're not doing it to keep
They
inflation
literally
low.
control
want
the
to-
interest rates, which actually keeps inflation down. That's what
So they
their
keep-
job is.
No, they
Their
respond
whole
to
job
inflation.
is to keep the inflation between like
Inflation
1.5% and 3%. That's why we have
Inflation
interest rates fluctuate
Is
to
not,
keep that in
like-
check.
Oh
That's the
my
whole point
God.
of the Fed. Anyways, well, we can move on
It's
from this.
not.
Okay, that's
Maddie,
fine.
what? Okay, hold the fuck up. Hold the fuck up. Prime, can
It's
I,
okay. It's
for
fine.
the love of God, can
Go
I
ahead,
go?
Go ahead, counterpoints.
Okay, hold the fuck. Okay, so Maddie, you're being fucking snooty, and that's because I'm not in person and I don't have my fucking
I love you,
face
counterpoints.
in order to
I'm
mug the
snooty
fuck
and
out of
right.
you.
So
to
yeah,
stop.
I've been
No, 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 no.
If you hold the
Hey,
fuck up.
hey, let
I earned that
counter
right.
let
Okay.
counter respond, please.
Okay, if you let Biggs get past the fucking like 20% of his fucking point, we could have actually gotten somewhere. But you and Kiyosan just kept fucking interrupting. And then on top of that, I understand all of you fucking assholes all at the same time. And basically, this rolls down to new and old fucking theories of economics and monetary theory. Literally talking to fucking like neoclassical fucking in like Keynesian economists versus like modern monetary theorists and like everybody fucking in between in the spectrum, and pretending that any one of you has like a monopoly on fucking financial or macroeconomic knowledge is dumb as fuck, because you know goddamn well every single one of you, if you have like 10 economics majors in a fucking room, there's going to be at least 3 opinions. You're all going to get drunk and scream at each other about it. So don't pretend that you have a fucking monopoly on knowledge. And on top of that, I was raised with Biggs's perspective about like basically fiscal policy. But it turns out, or I don't want to say it turns out, but it seems like in the modern era, fiscal policy and monetary policy and economic policy has largely shifted where debt is not important. But I was raised in a world where I was literally told by my parents every single fucking day that the federal government was going to spend itself into a black hole. My dollar wouldn't be worth shit. And basically I needed to learn to fucking prepare for Mad Max world and fucking like eat my dog, because basically people like Matty Cakes were fucking running the goddamn Fed and they were going to destroy the value of the dollar. That's what I was
think your
taught as a
parents
kid.
were wrong, buddy.
Okay,
So
hold,
one
hold
thing
the fuck
I-
up. No,
Like,
hold the
I'm
fuck
just-
up. Hold,
No, Connor. Hey,
Everyone shut up.
hey,
Everyone
I
shut
can
up.
go.
Everyone
Hey.
shut up. Everyone shut up.
Fiery. I love the
Fine, that's a good
fire.
point.
I love the
Okay,
fire.
no, Kevin, you can't tell me that I'm fucking wrong, because the thing
Yes,
about
I
this
can.
is no, you can't, because there's waves and fluctuations to this shit, and you can't see past the fucking horizon. MMT is a fucking new goddamn theory. Just because it's been running for fucking 20 or 30 years without fail doesn't mean that we're not on the brink of something fucking terrible. And we have to balance all of these concerns. You can't tell me that I'm wrong when you don't have the 50-year projection out into the future.
To be fair, MMT is like very, very, very heterodox, and it's not super like used in like mainstream theory, because those people are doo-doo heads and don't want the Fed to control the interest rate. Okay, like the way that we do monetary policy isn't necessarily governed by MMTers, and I'm just going to turn it over to people who are dancing around with their hands.
Yeah, to be fair, it doesn't matter if either of you guys, either side is right or wrong. The fact is the states already have the money. Also, states have huge surplus already. Iowa has a $1.2 billion rainy day surplus fund, and I'd like to know why people are getting evicted and why
Oh.
they're not spending that during COVID. What else is
True.
more rainy day fund, right? So yeah, this entire argument is moot. The states have the money. We can stop this, and we haven't. So
So I want to let's a few more people in the time we have remaining. So Malcolm, Maddie, Biggs. Remember, we don't have a whole bunch of time, so.
I just wanted to like, sorry. I just wanted to like kind of come back just a little bit because I am really curious because we have like a lot of like micro conversations going on, but like what is the alternative solution? So like we keep saying like we're kicking the can down the road like just by extending the moratorium. And
Pull
what
the
is the good
Band-Aid
that
off
comes from the
now.
moratorium?
Pull
Like
the
people
fucking
aren't
Band-Aid
fucking
off.
homeless. That's like a pretty big net good. So I'm like really curious what the alternative solution is. Is it just like let this net fall and let the courts get clogged up? Let a bunch of people get like be fucking homeless? Like what is the alternative to just like, okay, it's done. Now what? Like what is the solution here?
All right, let's go to Maddie, then Biggs.
Okay. So the Federal Reserve has a little bit more of a purpose than just controlling inflation. And to think that there's a singular, like, binary influence on inflation where it's like, oh, if I do this, then this, that is completely neglecting the entire economic ecosystem and complicated factors that go towards
Yes, it's
evaluating inflation
multifaceted.
in the
Who would
first
have
place, but
thought it's
also what actually influences it.
multifaceted? Oh my
How close we are to
god.
full employment is a big thing.
Yeah, and
Unemployment
we
is
were
a big
good until the
thing.
pandemic.
Our
Yep.
trade agreements, our the
Yeah,
strength of the
trade
dollar
agreements are
as
pretty good.
opposed
The
to the rest
dollar
of
was
the world.
fucking
Like,
booming in
it's a
2019 before
little
the
bit more
pandemic.
complicated than just Fed does this,
Obviously,
then this
yes.
happens, and that's how
Oh
we keep it
yes,
between a certain percentage.
multifaceted. Very
If it were
good.
that
Thank you
easy,
very
they
much.
wouldn't need
I
PhDs on the
love
board
it.
of governors of
love
the
it.
Federal
It's so
Reserve
good.
to make these difficult
PhDs are like
decisions
fucking
about
low
the
tier,
prime
fucking
rate
low
that they
tier.
issue loans to different financial institutions. So, like, come on. And
The
I
whole
think,
process of the Fed
there's
is
actually a
fucked to
lot
begin
of
with, but that's
discussion
fine.
in the economics community about what actually drives growth and what we should be implementing at the monetary level. I recommend you read people like Paul Krugman or Joseph Stiglitz to understand that kind of stuff better. They do a fantastic job of breaking it down. Actually, Secretary Yellen, who is now the Secretary of the Treasury, she has some brilliant writings on the question of the relationship between unemployment and inflation and just how much they are either intertwined or what the actual multiplier is on what drives inflation, even in times of things like low unemployment. So just wanted to say, like,
Just wanted to say.
let's
Fine.
not try to make the Federal Reserve to just be like, oh, it's just there to control inflation. No, that's completely demonstrating a lack of understanding about the actual factors that
Yes,
contribute
that's fine. That's
to
okay. That's fine.
inflation. And of course, that's in an aggregate because they always are looking at the consumer pricing index to indicate
True.
whether or not
Very
inflation is
true.
actually happening.
Yes.
But yeah,
Okay, that's fine.
I'm going to
Go
link
ahead.
a few things in chat if people have
You go ahead.
questions.
That's good.
One thing
Yeah.
I'd like, I'm just gonna kind of piggyback off that just for 2 seconds, just to knock out a
I'm
quick
getting
myth that I've seen floating
gangbanged.
around.
I'm
Because I know
literally
this pops
getting
up in my chat like
gangbanged right now.
9 to 10 times a day.
I'm
Every time I
getting
boot up fucking stream,
gangbanged.
is like the idea that we're seeing inflation now, and the reason why we have these people with like such important degrees look over this very consistently, like. Nobody wants to be Japan, right? Japan is in a really fucking shit state right now. They're at the point of having negative interest rates, right? Because they couldn't handle their shit properly. The Fed really wants to
We're
fucking
close to
raise
that
interest
too.
rates right now, like really badly. Interest rates
they
aren't like
can't.
obviously like Madison, and they would actually have support in raising interest rates right now because prices, like the consumer price index, has gone up significantly. Like I know
Yes.
that Powell like specifically pointed to like lumber as a reason as an indicator here, but these prices are like transitory. Like the fact that these people are able to look at these things and look through them and understand where they need to change interest rates or be, for example, sometimes the loaner of last resort. Those things are like really important. The Fed is a great institution who have a lot of really knowledgeable people on there. Powell was a really surprise. I've been really impressed by Powell.
I hope I can verbalize
I don't keep
this
too heavy an eye
correctly.
on the Fed, but like Powell has been like a pretty good Trump appointment, and I hope that Biden keeps him on. Just as a side note, but the inflation currently is transitory. The Fed is doing a really good job of handling it and understands when to raise interest rates, but they really need to, and soon, hopefully, I would like to see them raised.
I wanted to not like Powell, but I agree.
Can I please go?
Powell's
Can
doing
I
a really
go?
good job. Was
Can I
like,
go?
Okay. Yeah, let's go to Biggs, please.
All right, so I'm so glad you brought that up. So, if you look at it from 2019 to 2020, food inflation has gone up 100% from 1.8 to 3.9. We've seen the continuous inflation on a lot of different industries and a lot of different markets. a lot of that, I will grant, is due to the constraint on the I forgot the word I'm looking for, but the logistics of resources from China and resources from other countries and manufacturing from other countries, right? But the inflation has gone up even more in other industries, and we have actually seen the debt raise, and which is kind of interesting that we actually have this conversation now, is because this last week they had the end of the debt ceiling issue. And now that the Congress is on hiatus, they're not able to raise the debt ceiling. So we are literally locked in at our $28.5 trillion. So now the government is literally going to have to sell off assets in order to pay debt. So we are literally at a point now where we have so much debt that we are going to have to basically go to eBay and sell our fucking shit online like a fucking garage sale to actually improve our and not default on our actual credit. So in 2011, we actually had, for the first time ever, the United States went from AAA to AA plus. So now we might have that same thing happen if things aren't improved and these ridiculous spending isn't held in check. Now, to me, if we are going to have this memoriam in the evictions, either the money has to come from the government, which we don't have the money to spend, or B, we have to do something where we say, hey, we need to hold the people accountable for what is happening, and they should be responsible for paying their debts. Now, I agree with you that, and what Amanda brought up with the states being able to provide the money we've already had earmarked for these landlords. But my issue is, if we prolong the the moratorium on the evictions, we will continue to accrue that debt. So I think it's now better to pull off the Band-Aid now, pay off what we have, which is already earmarked for the states, to those landlords, so they can get their money and the people can be relieved of the debt, and we can move on from there. The longer we push this out, the more detriment we're going to have to society, the more detriment we're going to have to the actual individual debt holders, which is the individual citizens, and the worse it's going to be for the landlords and then the banks that back their mortgages for the land that they own. So to me, I think it's best to pull off that Band-Aid now, have the states put in the money that's already for them to put in, and we can just move forward from there, and we'll hopefully the people are able to not be homeless. And again, I think people that are in those situations should be helped, and I'm all for the safety net for that, but I think that we need to draw the line somewhere, and I think now is the time. And the reality is we've actually the moratorium is ended, so and we need to just move on from now and hopefully improve the people that are actually struggling, and that's where I want the money to be spent if we can help them.
Okay, all right. So we've run out of time on this. To my audience, if you've been enjoying this content, then hit that follow button right now. Make sure notification bell. Because I want to say, I'm going live. We do this 6 days a week.
What's up, Slime Hunter? How you doing?
And we're not done yet. We're going to continue on to our open walk-on panel right after this, where audience members like you, yes, you sitting at home, may participate. We'd love to have you. So stick around. The stream is not ending. I'm just giving these amazing people an outro, but we will have more content for you right after this. Right? Okay. And also hit up our social media type stuff. We got Twitter. Follow us on Twitter for channel updates. I forgot to send an update about today's stream, but whatever. Jump onto our Discord, which is where we do literally everything on this channel. So we're building a huge community there. We'd love for you to join us. And ignore
Thanks,
the
Slime Hunter.
ignore the
I appreciate it.
I don't know what they're talking about.
I probably could have done a little better at the end to make a concise point. I felt like I
subscribe
kind of fell off at the end.
Where you'll find the VODs.
I think I made a good point, but just kind of needed to make a more hard-hitting
find that on Twitch.
ending.
We'll find
and I
that
kinda
on
failed with
YouTube.
that,
So
but
go subscribe, like, and comment. Okay. So we'll give these amazing individuals an outro, and then we'll move on to that. So start with Kyo-san. Thank you so much, Kyo-san, for being around. Like I knew it. I brought Kyo in, right? And he found out about this pretty last minute, but still, despite that, right? He brings a great conversation, great perspective on all of these things, right? I'm always so excited to have him here, and for good reason. Thank you, Kyo, for spending your time. I know you're a busy man, and you're in an opposing time zone. So thank you for spending time here with me and my community.
Anytime I can make like the Reverie or any panel for you, I really try to. You know, it's always such a great place to have conversations. You do a great job. I love what you do. I make no secret about that. You know, for people who don't know me, I'm Kyosan AU, but I'd be very surprised if you didn't at this point, just because I spend so much time in the trans community. Although I have been lately, maybe there's some transitory audience here. So if you want to find me, you can find me on twitch.com/KyosanAU, on Twitter at the same @KyosanAU. I'm on YouTube. You can look me up, KyosanAU. You'll still find me there. Couple of debates, a little bit behind on the YouTube content, but we're working on it, you know. You will find me later on today. I run a weekly Meatless Mondays cooking stream, which ends up happening on a Tuesday every week. This week, if you're interested, we're going to be cooking seitan, which is a wheat gluten mock meat. So you can make your own mock meat. It's one of the highest protein things that you can eat. It has a very, very complete amino acid profile if you care about that. So if you want to learn how to cook delicious vegan food, come out, be there for it in about 3 or 4 hours time, I think it is. It's going to be real fucking hype, dude. The kitchen and everything, it's gonna be gas. Okay, and also fucking give some money to Prime, give some subs to Prime. You know, this man does hard work. The tentpole of the Twitch community, we appreciate him. You know, give him that cash, give it up. Check if you got that Prime sub, give it to Prime. You know, Prime for Prime.
Very much appreciate.
Oh, and by the way, I just want to make a note that the I wonder why the debt ceiling is being raised. Republicans suck. Republicans suck. Republicans suck. Thank you very much.
Satan.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Really much appreciate. Thank you for the kind words. Next, Shadows as well. Thank you for joining us, being a part of my community, giving us that question, which turned out to be a really good conversation. Thank you so much for that. I'm glad we finally got to it. Shadows, right? If Overkill-san's typing, you could tell us more. If you could tell the world about yourself, that would be great.
Yeah, of course, it's always good being part of these. This happened to be one of those reveries where my energy level died down at the end. But you know, it was still a super fun conversation, and of course, loved being able to discuss that first question. I thoroughly enjoyed that conversation. For those of you who want to hear me speak more, you can go over to my Twitch channel. You know, I talk about politics, I do music, I do gaming. I'm probably going to be doing mostly gaming and music when my school year starts. Yeah, if you're into either of those, if you're into like Pokemon Nuzlocke or Nintendo games, or you know, watching people play piano or arrange music, you can come over there. I will hopefully be playing some piano tomorrow, assuming I'm responsible with my time and I'm actually able to like pack my fucking suitcase for Wednesday. But yeah, you can check me out over there at twitch.tv/shadowslightly. And I'll also drop my YouTube because I got some good videos over there. Make some good background music added to that music playlist if you like.
Okay. Next, we're going to go to Counterpoints, a goddamn VIP here in this community. I'm always so happy to have him around. Counterpoints, thank you for joining in. We didn't get to see you, but your beard lives with us in our hearts. So, Counter, if you could give yourself an outro.
Yeah. So I really actually enjoyed being a sentient bookcase, but just like, you know, Jesus or Osiris or something like that, I'm probably going to have to revive into like physical form at some point. So I'll do that, and I'll bring the beard back. For those of you who don't keep up with my personal life because I don't share it, I am transitioning jobs right now. I'm either, you know, basically doing a lateral move or a promotion with my current company, or I'm moving to another one, and I had to shave in order to be employable, unlike all you degenerate lefty fucks. But the beard will be back, and I will join you shortly, IRL. I do love this community. Please follow Prime if you're not already following. It's really simple. If you do have any dollary dues, then please, or whatever fake currency that Australia has, then please share it with Prime as well. He does put all this stuff on for us, and it's actually really fun participating. My name is Connor. I run a YouTube channel named Counterpoints. I'm centrist or center right. I'm a philosophy, science fiction, and politics nerd. And when I'm not a bookcase, I do like review popular media, but I also do debates and one-on-one panels. I got some pretty big debates. We're still working on details right now, but I'll announce them shortly. And always a pleasure being here. So thank you, Prime.
All right. Exclamation point Connor in chat. CONOR, as you see there. And you'll find the link to his YouTube channel. Please go check him out. He's a great guy. All right. And we lost someone. Oh no. Let's go to Maddie. Maddie, just a ray of awesomeness is what you are, right? You bright even when you're arguing, even when you're yelling at someone, like you just make this place much more fun. So thank you for being around, and thank you for emoting. Please keep doing that. That's amazing. I love just watching. Doesn't matter if you're talking or not. I just like watching what you're doing. So thank you, Maddie, for being here. Wow.
You did.
Sorry. I know. I thought I pressed the button and I didn't press the goddamn button. But,
Yeah, it's almost like you're Australian, but go ahead.
Also, some of my viewers were saying like, oh yeah, like Kiyo-san like does cooking streams all the time, and I was like, that's fucking awesome. So if I'm still awake in like 4 hours time, I will check this out because I'm really interested in checking out some good cooking content. But yeah, I'm Maddie Cakes. I don't have a poker face because I like can't not be just I can't not express how I'm feeling. And I love like if you check out my channel, I'm frequently on panels like this, which I love, especially when they are hosted by Prime. I'm here every week and I really enjoy it. But normally I also will talk about current events, about political organizing. I'll talk political strategy. That's what I do. Like my honest to God day job is I helped found a digital media agency, and we work with Democratic campaigns and other like progressive or socially minded initiatives and organizations, and just like make their digital programs badass. So that's what I do. And again, thank you. Subscribe to Prime. Give him your money, or give me your money. And yeah, it'll be great. And yeah, again, to everyone on this panel, I know sometimes it gets heated because we talk about things we care about a lot, but like know that I really valued like being here with you guys. I'm glad it wasn't an echo chamber, truly. So like to those who disagree, I mean, this is why me and Connor are best friends. Best friends, Connor.
Fucking true.
I really do value like that back and forth. So thank you like for coming out and having strongly held opinions and like being able to back it up and being open to talk about it here. It really does make a massive difference.
Kevin FM, thank you as well for stopping by and for jumping in. It's being such a good participator in all of this. I really appreciate you coming back again and again. Definitely welcome here. Kevin. Australian again. All right.
Yep, I've gone Australian. I'm sorry. So yes, thank you so much for having me. Even if I'm inadvertently transforming into an Australian due to that dirty, dirty man Kiyo-san over there, I love you. So yes, I talk about law stuff. I talk about history stuff. I talk about whatever tickles my fancy, and I do appreciate everybody being on here. You know, I definitely didn't mean to jump down people's throats when I did. I get very passionate about this stuff as well. So, Biggs, Connor, you know, like, if I was a bit of a douche, then I'm sorry.
No,
that is
you were
not
good.
intentional.
You were good.
That's just how us soulless husks called attorneys usually do. So,
He was good.
if you'd like to continue Prime's channel going on and on forever into the sunset, please give him some money. You can also give me money too. I would appreciate that. Please. I'm starving. I need to feed my cats. But yes, I'll stop rambling now. Thank you so much for having me.
Kevin's links in the chat, so there's the rest of their links. But this is the difference that Counter always points out between Democrats and Republicans, right? You apologizing for the light amount of pushback you've given, right? Rather than Republicans kicking down the fucking door, right? Calling everyone shitheads and then thinking they're the good guys. So you were fine. You were
To be fair, I'm an independent.
I was gonna say everyone here is like a panelist. We all know how it is. Okay, we raise. There's like 9 people here. We all raise our voices to each other. It's all in good fun. Okay, I don't think anyone holds it. Like I fucking talk with Biggs all the time. Okay, I don't know. We've got a like bunch of panels together. Biggs knows how it is.
Oh yeah.
Listen,
Absolutely.
I'm a sensitive guy, okay? So like, yeah, you know, I take this shit to heart.
See,
Biggs,
this is why you're a bookshelf.
Biggs, thank you for being here as well. Thank you for being one of those dissenting voices who
Thank
doesn't
you.
mind coming through and giving their opinion. It's so much appreciated. And you definitely came in near the end too when we were putting this all together. And it was really kind of you to spend time out of your day. I know you got other things to do. I know you got a family and all that, but you've neglected them for us, and we appreciate that.
I appreciate being the last man in, the lifeline that you throw out to get that last spot filled, especially when you have a need for the right leaning people. But in all seriousness, everybody, thank you, Prime. I love being on panels. I just love conversing with everybody on all sides of the aisle. I think everybody on this panel gives a very unique perspective. I want to say everybody that's watching, give everybody here a follow at least, if not a sub. Kyo-san is amazing. Like he said, we have back and forth here and there on other panels. Counterpoints is an amazing, center right person. I'm not as familiar with Kevin the FM, but I thought he did a great job tonight with his points, and I love his outfit. You look fucking dapper as hell. Matty Cakes.
Thank you, sir.
I love you. You have the best facial expressions on Twitch. I dare anybody to argue with that, okay? I dare you, okay?
Really nice.
Amanda Smash, you have the most passionate views with the least passionate facial expressions. Okay. I don't want you to take that as a detriment, because I think your takes are amazing. But yeah, you have the best nonchalant face I've ever seen on Twitch. And Malcolm, I'm not really familiar with you at all, and I'm sorry, and I hope to become more familiar with you, and hope to see you on some more panels. But thank you all for engaging in these great conversations. And Prime, you're amazing. I love your panels. And everybody, give all these people a follow and all these people a sub that you can, okay? They're amazing. This content is great. Every day. Prime comes every day with this stuff. Every day. The amount of work that this man puts into the Twitch stratosphere is just astronomical, okay? So send him to the fucking moon. Send that fucking Bitcoin, that fucking Ethereum, any of that shit. Send him to the fucking moon. Thank you again, Prime. You're amazing.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Malcolm. Malcolm, again, we had a long time. We're happy to have you back, Malcolm. Please tell the world about yourself.
Well, I'm Malcolm. Goddammit Malcolm on YouTube is where I have the biggest platform out of most of my social medias. I'm transmasculine. I host the only all trans mask everything panel on any fucking platform. Tragically, transmasculine people are left out of conversations on pretty much every level, specifically like trans political issues. We're just kind of invisible. So that's something that I think is really important. I talk a lot about trans political issues, trans policy. I read gender critical books on stream pretty regularly. I will watch gender critical content and kind of break apart those arguments and why they're dog shit. So you can find me on YouTube. It's easiest for Goddammit Malcolm, and then all my links are in my YouTube. That's the easiest way to do it. I appreciate you having me on as per usual, and I had to take a break because of work and everything was crazy. But hopefully I'll be around a little bit more. So I appreciate it again. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have a fantastic superstar mod in my community. We have Amanda, who does a lot for this channel, a lot for this community. So I'm so happy that she could join us. Once again, we get her to spend a lot of time with us, and we're happy every time she does so. Amanda, tell the world about yourself.
Yeah, I'm here just to let everyone know that I do get paid by Jeff Soros. No, but
Jeff Soros.
yeah, no, I'm
George-
Amanda. Yeah, George. Oh my gosh, yeah.
George Soros's
Wow.
estranged little brother,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, there did not land that joke, did I? Anyways, I am a political consultant. I specialize in field strategy and relational organizing. I think there were 3 autistic people on the panel tonight, so represent, yes. So I thought that was really cool. And this was a really interesting conversation, and big thanks for the compliment, I think.
Okay, all right. So, to my audience, we're going to continue on with our open walk-on panel after this. anyone here, any one of my panel members can join us, but if not, that's okay. Thank you for spending your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion with my audience. I know they appreciate just as much as I do. Have a good one. Bye.
How do?
Hello.
Yo.
Mike, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my computer.
All right, I'm gonna end my stream tonight, guys. Thank you for hanging out. I appreciate it. I'm gonna raid some Stardust. So thank you all for hanging out. Did it not work? I don't think it worked. Oh, it did work. Okay, good. All right. Thank you all for hanging out. I appreciate it. Stay out of trouble. Have fun. Peace.